Chapter 15. Chapter 15. Kneel. Ling Han walked into the martial training court and saw a beautiful young girl practicing martial arts skills in the center. She was wearing a white warrior dress and her movements were as graceful as a deity's. Around her was a number of young men and women who had gathered to watch. The young women's gazes were heated whilst the men wore intoxicated expressions as they observed her practice. That young girl was Shen Ziyan. Every day, she would be cultivating in this location. She truly was very beautiful, but when compared to Lu Yutong, her beauty fell short. Moreover, Ling Han had long been used to seeing remarkably stunning beauties in his last life, so naturally he was not moved. His predecessor was a hopeless romantic. However, now that he was dead, the one in charge was he who had once been a warrior of the heaven tier. Ling Han took a deep breath. He felt the last remnants of his predecessor's obsessive feelings vanish into thin air. Now he was finally the one and only owner of this body. His predecessor had two things he could not let go of. One was his father, and the other was Shen Ziyan. Now that these two obsessions have been completely neutralized, the predecessor could finally and completely depart, and no longer have the slightest bit of effect over this body. In truth, his predecessor knew very well that he and Shen Ziyan could never be, so he had only meant to secretly admire her from afar. Otherwise, if this obsession was something like wanting to marry her, and no one else, Ling Han would be in big trouble. "Get out of here!" It was at this moment that Shen Ziyan stopped her movements, and shouted these words coldly at him. How overbearing! Did she think that her family owned the martial training court? Naturally, Ling Han didn't want to even bother with this kind of condescending, arrogant girl who thought the whole world revolved around her. After all, the obsession had vanished, and in his opinion, Shen Ziyan simply could not be considered incomparably beautiful, nor was she shockingly talented. She really didn't even have the qualifications for him to consider her for one moment longer. For the sake of his predecessor, he did not react to her insulting words, and turned away, intending to leave. "Stop right there!" A young man dressed in embroidered clothing sprang out and, with a few steps, rushed in front of Ling Han, blocking his way. He said, "Didn't you hear younger sister Disciple Shen's words? She told you to roll out of here. You don't use your legs to roll." His name was Qing Hao, and he was the second son of the clan head of the other great clan in Grey Cloud Town. He was also one of Shen Ziyan's admirers. However, Shen Ziyan had never treated him any differently from the others. Now, he had finally found an opportunity to show off in front of her, teach Ling Han a hard lesson in order to obtain Shen Ziyan's favor. Moreover, this was not the first time he had bullied Ling Han, because among the people he could bully, Ling Han's status was the highest, and thus bullying him gave him the most satisfaction. Ling Han's eyes automatically turned severe. The images of his predecessor being bullied by Qing Hao played vividly before his eyes. Originally, he would not have bothered had Qing Hao remained a simple face in the crowd, but now that he had spotted Qing Hao, even if the latter had not provoked him in this manner, he had no plans of letting matters rest. "Are you looking to die?" he said in a murderous voice. "Ha ha ha ha, Ling Trash, are you threatening me?" Qing Hao gave a laugh, yet very quickly his gaze turned severe. "We haven't seen each other for just a few days, and now you've grown so brave that you actually dare to talk back to me?" Everyone in the area started laughing. Ling Han's identity as a piece of trash was well known throughout the whole academy, so these words naturally seemed like the greatest joke in the world to them. Ling Han smiled coldly and walked towards Qing Hao. "What is it now? Are you going to beg me to spare you? If you're going to beg, then make sure you speak loudly enough," Qing Hao said nonchalantly. "Pa!" It was at this moment that a sharp, crisp slap was heard, causing everyone's laughter to suddenly stop. Qing Hao covered his face with one hand. His face expressed his utter disbelief. Just now, he had actually been given a slap by Ling Han, given a slap by a piece of trash. How great a humiliation was this! He immediately entered berserk mode, and blue veins popped up all over his forehead as he said thickly, "Are you tired of living that you actually dare to hit me?" "I can't hit you," Ling Han said calmly. His predecessor had been bullied by Qing Hao numerous times. He was only getting back a little interest now. How dare you! Qing Hao never thought that Ling Han would not only not beg for his life out of panic, but actually dared to talk back to him. He was originally already extremely furious, so how could he hold himself back now? He immediately raised his hand, which flew towards Ling Han. The current Ling Han was in the 4th layer of body refining tier. Even though that was still 2 layers lower than Qing Hao, they were both in the middle stage of body refining tier. With Ling Han's battle experience as someone who had once wielded the power of the heaven tier, how could he possibly lose? Pa! Qing Hao had just raised his hand, but Ling Han had already reacted accordingly, and his right hand flew out. Although he acted later, he reached his target earlier, and, once again, another solid slap landed on Qing Hao's face. With the great strength behind this slap, Qing Hao staggered, causing the hand he raised to only hit empty air. Trash! Ling Han said in a calm tone, shaking his head. Everyone was silent. This label of trash originally belonged to Ling Han, but now no one could find it in themselves to laugh, for Qing Hao had indeed been slapped twice. If the first time could be considered to be the fault of Qing Hao's carelessness, then the second time could only be Ling Han's display of ability. But how was this possible? Wasn't Ling Han the publicly acclaimed biggest piece of trash in the whole academy? Meanwhile, Qing Hao had been enraged to the point that both his eyes had turned red. With a great roar, he threw himself at Ling Han. However, the difference between himself and Ling Han was much too large. Pa! 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 No matter how he attacked, Ling Han somehow managed to act later yet hit first, each slap causing him to stumble. His attack power naturally subsided by itself. I see now, Ling Han's power is actually not as strong as Qing Hao's. It seems to be only somewhere around 4th or 5th layer of body refining tier. However, his 6th sense is too terrifying. Every time Qing Hao makes a move, it's as if he already knew where Qing Hao would attack, and make the necessary adjustments in advance. 4th or 5th layer of body refining tier? That can't be. He has the 5 elements disarray spirit base, so even if he wants to break through to the middle stage of the body refining tier, he would only be able to achieve that at least after he's 20. No matter what his cultivation level is, just his skill in reading attacks is scary enough. After watching for a period of time, the students in the area too discovered this secret. This secret was actually something very simple. Ling Han would predict all of Qing Hao's attacks and react accordingly in advance to compensate for the gap between their cultivation levels. Meanwhile, Qing Hao was completely slapped silly. There was a persistent buzzing in his head and his face was scarlet and swollen, turning it into a pig's head. Only the fury he felt kept on supporting his continuous attacks, but all of it was pointless effort. He was finally scared, and no longer dared to make any move. But how could Ling Han just let matters go like this? Pa! 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 He kept up a furious litany of slaps, and Qing Hao's lip very quickly was split. Fresh blood was spilled, and he looked extremely pitiful. At this moment, no one dared to step up and intervene. I surrender this time, don't hit me anymore, Qing Hao pleaded. However, Ling Han did not stop his movements. In the past, when Qing Hao bullied his predecessor, when had he ever been merciful? He thrashed him for a moment longer before he said, Kneel! What? Qing Hao felt this was utterly absurd. This trash actually dared tell him to kneel? If he really knelt, then not only would his pride be completely shattered, even the Qing clan would be laughed at by others. After all, he was the second son of the Qing clan's clan head. This was too much. Even when he and his older brother had bullied Ling Han in the past, they had only dared to thrash the other until his whole body was covered with injuries. They had not dared to make the other kneel down. This could possibly spark off a blood feud between the two clans. Chapter 16. Chapter 16. Crawl out of here. Ling Han, don't go too far. Qing Hao raised his head and said. He could not and would not yield on this matter. Ling Han laughed thickly and said, And here I was afraid you might yield and cause me to have no more reason to kill you. This guy wants to kill me? Cheng Hao's whole body shivered. He looked at Ling Han only to see a harsh expression on his face. He was obviously not joking. He couldn't control the trembling of his body and said, "Do you want to induce a blood feud between the two great clans? Do you want to become the greatest sinner in the history of the Ling clan? A tiny little Qing clan, and you think you're worthy of flopping around in front of me?" Ling Han said disdainfully. "If your Qing clan dare to make a move, I will eliminate the whole lot of you." Boom! Everyone in the surrounding area erupted with voices. What big words! The Ling and the Qing were both powerful clans in Grey Cloud Town. Their strength was fairly equal, and should there be a dispute between the two, either side would win and would only come off worse. As a result, although the two clans both had the desire to get rid of the other, and thus gain sole authority over Grey Cloud Town, either dared to make the first move. Ling Han, this trash, actually said that he would single-handedly eliminate the Qing clan. Was he joking? However, looking at the fierce look on Ling Han's face at the moment, his whole body exuding an indescribable might, for some reason, it caused everyone in the area to become speechless. They all had the same feeling, and that was the young man in front of them at this moment was no longer the so-called trash they knew. There were even some girls whose gazes had grown bright. How manly! Their knees actually felt a little weak. "How boastful of you! There isn't need for anyone else. My older brother alone would be able to single-handedly suppress you!" Qing Hao shouted, his whole expression filled with obstinate defiance. In his eyes, Ling Han was only a toy that had been bullied numerous times by him and his older brother, Qing Xiang. Now that Ling Han had turned the tables on him to suppress him, this was something that he could not accept in any way or manner. "Pa!" Ling Han gave him another slap, and asked in an awe-inspiring tone, "So you really want to die then?" If the Qing clan intended to make any kind of retaliation against him, he would not mind eliminating the Qing clan using this opportunity considering Zhu Hexian's respect towards him. Having him take action naturally would only be a small issue. And while Zhu Hexian was no genius in martial arts, he at least had the cultivation of the gushing spring tear. It would be a piece of cake for him to eliminate the Qing clan. So should the Qing clan want to bring about their own destruction so desperately, he would not mind using Zhu Hexian to get rid of them. Qing Hao could not help himself as cold sweat rolled down his face. In front of Ling Han, he felt an incomparable pressure, and also felt the threat of imminent death. This young man in front of him was no longer the Ling Han of the past, whom he had bullied numerous times. He was now a terrifying god of death. "Pa!" He could not help the weakening of his legs as he knelt on the ground. Faced with the choice between his life and his pride, he would cast away his pride without any second thought. After all, once you die, everything is over. He really knelt down. The whole area was in an uproar. Qing Hao was the second young master of the Qing clan, and could to a large degree represent the entire Qing clan. Someone like that had actually knelt down. Moreover, the one he was kneeling down in front of was a member of the clan which was Qing clan's enemy. This could practically be engraved on the Qing clan's plaque of dishonor. So Qing Hao was actually someone who would bully the weak but tremble before the strong. Why did no one realize his cowardly character in the past? Everyone wanted to know the answer. But after thinking it over, this was quite normal. After all, Qing Hao had always been in the spotlight as the second young master of the Qing clan. Who would dare oppose him? Thus, of course, it would be impossible for anyone to find out that, underneath his overbearing, arrogant exterior, he was actually a big coward. But Ling Han really was too overbearing. He had actually forced the second young master of the Qing clan to kneel down. Wasn't he afraid of provoking a great war between the two clans? So cool! The numerous girls that were already infatuated and love-struck because of Ling Han's previous actions shrieked loudly. "Ling Han, have you done enough?" Qing Hao said with gritted teeth. There was only one thought in his head at this moment, and that was to leave this location, then come charging back with his older brother, regaining his lost pride and avenging the dishonor and insult he had suffered. "Crawl out of here," Ling Han said calmly. "What?" Qing Hao thought that he had heard wrongly. Pa! Ling Han gave a kick to Qing Hao's back, forcing him to hold himself up with both hands on the ground. Ling Han, you dare insult me in this way! I want to kill you! Kill you! Qing Hao was about to go mad. Kneeling down was already the greatest insult he could imagine, but if he also had to actually drop onto the ground like this, and actually crawl out of here? So what if I insult you? Trash! Ling Han said coldly. Haven't the Qing brothers insulted him enough in the past? The reason why the Qing brothers dared to act that way was because they were stronger than his predecessor, and the adults definitely could not interfere in this kind of dispute amongst the younger generation, at least as long as there was no death or permanent injury. Otherwise, they would be laughed at by others. You either crawl out of here, or you die here, make your choice, Ling Han said. So domineering, was this really the Ling Han they knew? Everyone was struck dumb and speechless. In the past, they had all laughed at Ling Han for being a piece of trash. But what kind of trash would actually dare to force the second son of the Qing clan to kneel down and crawl like a dog in public? He was freaking awesome. Qing Hao was sweating like crazy. He had no desire to become a sinner of the clan, and even more didn't want to be shamed in public. However, facing the possibility of death, his willpower was simply too weak. Very quickly he moved his hands, starting to crawl on the ground. Ha ha! Everyone around them started laughing. Suddenly it was as if the laughter was contagious, causing even more people to start following their lead and laugh. The second young master of the Qing clan crawling around like a dog, this was not something that could be seen every day. Qing Hao's tears gushed out instantly. He gripped his fists tightly, and swore in his heart that he would definitely kill Ling Han. Definitely. He crawled for more than 10 steps, then immediately pushed up from the ground, and rushed out of the martial training court. He wanted to find his older brother, Cheng Xiang, and kill Ling Han. Kill! 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 Pa pa pa! Applause rose up and attracted everyone's attention. Everyone fell silent and looked towards the slender, beautiful girl who just clapped her hands. Shen Ziyan stopped clapping and said, I have to admit, this was a very exciting performance. However, do you think you can move me with something like this? You're deluding yourself. Don't think I don't know what your intentions are. Unfortunately, the gap between you and I is far too wide. You can't even compare to my little finger. To be liked by someone like you is a complete insult to myself. You think too highly of yourself. Idiot! Ling Han shook his head. For the sake of his predecessor, he did not want to bother with his foolish girl. With my talent in martial arts, I will definitely be famous in future, and create miracles even though I am a girl, Shen Ziyan said loftily. You do not have to say anything anymore. I know that everything you have done was to attract my interest, but very unfortunately, I will never look at a small character like you. Everything between us has long ended. I don't mind telling you, I've already obtained the invitation to Huyang Academy, and will officially become a disciple of Huyang Academy next year. You, a mere piece of trash, actually dare to like me? You are not qualified. Not qualified. Not qualified. Fine, she can say everything she wants. Liking her. And that was the natural course of events. She was beautiful and extremely gifted in martial arts, so she must definitely be admired. If you say you don't like her, damn, then you must be deliberately saying contrary words to attract her attention. To be narcissistic to this point, she was definitely a weirdo. Even Ling Han was struck speechless. Usually when he's faced with this kind of shameless person, he would directly give a good, solid slap. 9th layer of body refining tier, a bit challenging, but not impossible. Ling Han's eyes grew cold, and he was just about to walk over when his eyes fell upon a beautiful figure walking slowly into the martial training court. Lu Yutong. She was an extraordinarily beautiful woman who would become the focus of everything wherever she went. Very quickly, everyone's attention was attracted by her beautiful figure. Suddenly, everyone put on a stunned expression. She was so beautiful. Shen Ziyan was indeed a beautiful girl, but when compared with this person, she fell short. Moreover, This girl had an indescribably graceful bearing, as if she was a noble princess. In comparison, Xinzi Yan's so-called beauty was overshadowed to the point she looked like a village girl. At this moment, there was only one thought in everyone's heart: who was she? Was she a goddess come down from the heavens? How could her beauty be so cool and elegant? Those who dared to have any thoughts about her felt like they were committing blasphemy. Under everyone's dumbstruck stares, Lu Yutong had already passed Ling Han by and, without a single pause, continued walking forwards. This was natural. If Lu Yutong had actually stopped, they would have been even more shocked. A mere piece of trash. How could he possibly have any relation to this cool and elegant goddess? Xinzi Yan felt great pressure. The other's beauty caused even her to feel her own inferiority in comparison, causing her to go mad with jealousy. The other was not just a little bit more beautiful than her. In all the categories, looks, figure and demeanor, she was completely overwhelmed, so no matter how much she didn't want to admit it, she could only grit her teeth in secret. Lu Yutong stopped in front of Xinzi Yan, and with a wave of her hand, a slap sounded against the other's face. Pa! Crisp, loud and clear. You dash! Xinzi Yan was slapped stupid, but she immediately flared up in fury. With a wave of her right hand, a similar slap flew towards Lu Yutong. But what could the 9th layer of body refining tier do against the 9th layer of element gathering tier? Pa! Lu Yutong's hand once again rose and flew down, and another solid slap resounded against Xinzi Yan's face a second time. With these two slaps, Xinzi Yan's beautiful hair was messed up, her beautiful face swollen, and she looked a little poignant, but her eyes were filled with fury and poison, as if she wanted to devour someone. She gave a sharp scream and once again attacked Lu Yutong. But this was obviously pointless effort. Pa pa pa! She was repeatedly slapped, as if she was a doll without any ability of retaliation. Everyone gasped. These two girls seemed to be about the same age, so why was the difference in ability between them so wide? Who on earth was this icy beauty, and why was she, for some reason, slapping Xinzi Yan? What right do you have to be proud? Lu Yutong asked coldly. Chapter 17. Chapter 17. Cheng Xiang has arrived. You think you're a martial arts genius? Lu Yutong said coldly. I am 17 years old this year just like you, but I am already in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. What about you? Pooh! These words caused everyone to gasp in astonishment. The 9th layer of element gathering tier, what kind of concept was that? Only the strongest of the strong in Grey Cloud Town had this kind of cultivation level. Xinzi Yan was indeed a genius. Those who had achieved the 9th layer of body refining tier at the age of 17 were definitely an uncommon existence in the history of Grey Cloud Town. On average, there would only be 2 or 3 of such geniuses every 100 years, and each one of them demonstrated extraordinary talent in their lifetime, going on to become famous and leave their mark in the history of Rain Country. But when compared with Lu Yutong, Xinzi Yan couldn't even hold a candle to the former. A 17-year-old managed to achieve the 9th layer of element gathering tier, even in the vast territory of Rain Country. How many such geniuses would appear in 100 years? Lu Yutong no longer suppressed her power, and released the majestic aura of a warrior in the 9th layer of element gathering tier. In an instant, everyone in the surrounding area could sense the strength hidden within her body. Xinzi Yan bore the brunt of it as the one closest to Lu Yutong. Underneath this powerful aura, she abruptly lowered her head. She wasn't even qualified to look directly at Lu Yutong. This was unacceptable to the arrogant Xinzi Yan, and as she struggled to raise her head to look directly at her opponent, her eyes were filled with fear, despair, and confusion. Why was there suddenly an appearance of someone her own age, but with both beauty and brilliant talent that even she had no choice but to admit her inferiority? Furthermore, why had such a person given her a slap out of the blue? How dare you look down on him? Lu Yutong spoke, turning to point at Ling Han, and once more turned to look at Xinzi Yan. You're completely unqualified. What? She was here to defend Ling Han. Whether it was Xinzi Yan or everyone else, they were all in a state of complete disbelief. This girl with elegant and noble bearing, unparalleled beauty and shocking talent in martial arts, was actually acquainted with Trash Ling? Being acquainted with each other was inconceivable enough, and yet she had actually defended Ling Han. How could anyone accept this? Especially the guys in the area, they all felt like they were about to die of jealousy. Xin Ziyan gritted her teeth, her eyes spitting fire. She had now transferred all her fury onto Ling Han. That was because Lu Yutong was too strong, and she dared not have even the slightest thought of revenge. However, Ling Han was a different story. With his cultivation level at the 4th layer of body refining tier, in her eyes he could be finished off in a single blow. Moreover, everything was because of Ling Han. He had deliberately made fun of her, so she spoke to him in mockery. As a result, she was publicly slapped by Lu Yutong, and had disgraced herself. However, in truth, had she not insulted Ling Han in the first place, he would have long left. Then the subsequent course of events would never have happened. But with her self-centered personality, how could she possibly reflect on her own behavior? So naturally she would push all the fault onto another person's shoulders. She pointed at Ling Han, and spoke shrilly. "In what way am I not qualified? Isn't this guy just a piece of trash? Trash? Have you seen a piece of trash that could break through 2 layers within a single night? And what kind of trash would cause a black-grade alchemist to beg just to be able to follow by his side?" Naturally, Lu Yutong did not intend to inform Xin Ziyan about any of this, so she only said, "Such a short-sighted woman like yourself naturally cannot see that underneath the dust lies gold, underneath the darkness hides a pearl. You have already missed out on your chance, so there's no point in pointing out his brightness to you." As she spoke, Lu Yutong felt a little irritated. Ling Han had actually admired a woman like this. Of course, she would never admit that she was jealous. Ha ha. Xin Ziyan laughed loudly before pointing at Ling Han and said, "He's gold, he's a pearl? What kind of joke are you playing? He's nothing more but a piece of trash, a complete, utter piece of trash. In less than 3 months, he will become someone that all of you would only be able to look up to," Lu Yutong said assuredly. She did not know why Ling Han had kept such a low profile in the past, but now he was obviously going to display his brilliance, dazzling to the point that the sun would look pale in comparison. Hearing these words, everyone sneered. Although Ling Han had truly defeated Qinghao, but his actual cultivation level was only the 4th layer of body refining tier, or the 5th layer, at most. Although this kind of cultivation level was not considered trash, it was still very far off from being proclaimed as a genius, not to mention actually becoming someone that everyone would only look up to. And? Lu Yutong's almond eyes widened. The aura of a warrior of 9th layer of element gathering tier trembled slightly, and suddenly all the taunting laughter came to a complete stop. "Ling Han, how dare you!" At this moment, a furious roar was heard as 2 figures quickly rushed into the martial training court. One of the figures was none other than Qinghao. The other figure seemed to be slightly older than him, with a few similarities in their features. This was Qinghao's older brother, Cheng Xiang, currently 19 years old, 9th layer of body refining tier. Both were at the 9th layer of body refining tier. One was 17, the other was 19. There was no comparison between their respective natural talent. Of course, a 19-year-old who has achieved the 9th layer of body refining tier would still be able to claim the title of a genius in Grey Cloud Town, although he was not as extraordinary as Xin Ziyan. Peng, 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 peng. Qing Xiang's steps echoed loudly, hinting at his current terrifying state of utter fury. He stopped about 3 meters away from Ling Han, pointed at him, and said, "What despicable means have you used?" Ling Han smiled coldly and said, "So I won only because I made use of despicable means? Of course, otherwise how could a piece of trash like you ever defeat my younger brother?" Qing Xiang spoke loudly. Unlike Ling Han's infamous reputation as a piece of trash, if today's issue was not appropriately handled, the Qing clan's reputation would definitely be seriously impacted. Thus, whether it was true that Ling Han had made use of despicable means or not, he had to insist that he had done so. Hearing the word trash, everyone's expressions became very strange. Xinzi Yan had just said something similar, and the result was being repeatedly slapped by Lu Yutong. This elite warrior of the 9th layer of element gathering tier is still here, and you actually dare to publicly curse at Ling Han? Isn't this just asking for trouble? With Ling Han's experience, he naturally could tell with a glance what Qing Xiang's intentions were. He did not reveal them though, and only slowly said, "Oh, then how do I prove that I did not make use of those despicable means you're speaking of?" "Hen, you used despicable means to bully my younger brother. As an older brother, how can I pretend that I did not see anything? Since you're so brave, then I dare you to spar with me." Qing Xiang obviously came well prepared. Everyone could not help thinking, how shameless! You are already in the 9th layer of body refining tier, while Ling Han is only in the 4th layer of body refining tier. The difference of 5 layers, how could he compare to you? However, as long as Ling Han was given a harsh beating, it would weaken the degree of embarrassment caused by Qing Hao's previous actions, and also help to avenge Qing Hao. This was a very smart move, and could be said to be hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. Ling Han's smile disappeared and he shook his head, saying, "You are in the 9th layer of body refining tier, while I'm only in the 4th layer of body refining tier. Doesn't this seem very unjust? I don't mind if you find someone to take your place in the spar." Qing Hao laughed loudly. Naturally, he was very familiar with Ling Han's label as trash. With such reputation, no one would befriend him in the whole academy, so where on earth could he find anyone to help him? Furthermore, even if he did find someone to help him, what about it? Qing Hao was in the 9th layer of body refining tier, and was one of the strongest in the academy. What did he have to fear? Everyone's expressions once more became very strange. Ling Han really did have someone in his corner. Furthermore, that someone was an extremely strong warrior of the 9th layer of element gathering tier that could, in one move, instantly kill a person in the 9th layer of body refining tier. Wasn't this just looking for death? Chapter 18. Chapter 18, Lone Wolf's Blood. Lu Yutong stepped forward and said, "I will take his place." Qing Xiang's attention was previously completely focused on Ling Han, so it was only now that he noticed Lu Yutong. Seeing this incredibly stunning icy beauty, he couldn't help but stare. How was it possible that such a beautiful woman existed in this world? Wait, did she just say she would be taking Ling Han's place in the spar? A powerful feeling of jealousy and anger arose within Qing Xiang. What right did a piece of trash like Ling Han have to possess such a beautiful woman? This was unjust and completely laughable. He quickly said, "Miss, you must be new here, and must have been deceived by this guy's pretty words. He is the trash from Ling Clan. This is something that everyone in this academy knows very well." A fiery anger immediately flashed in Lu Yutong's beautiful eyes. She could not help getting angered when she heard these people insult Ling Han. What right do these people have to insult him in this way? "Don't, just now it was a woman, so I did not mind you doing my work for me. But now the opponent is a man, and a duel between men should be settled between men," Ling Han said with a shake of his head, one hand placed on Lu Yutong's shoulder. Seeing such a scene, everyone in the area, even the females, felt that they were about to go mad with jealousy. Ling Han actually had such intimate contact with their goddess. What enraged them even further was the fact that Lu Yutong actually did not appear to resist it at all. Lu Yutong frowned slightly. Qing Xiang was different from Qing Hao by far. The former was in the 9th layer of body refining tier, and thus his cultivation level exceeded Ling Han's by a whole 5 layers. She knew Ling Han could perform miracles and possessed the ability to bypass the limitations of cultivation levels to challenge those much stronger than him, but the difference between him and his current opponent was really too large this time. In her opinion, the chance of Ling Han winning was close to 0. "Don't worry, you should have more faith in me," Ling Han said with a smile. "Then let's spar," Qing Xiang said. He did not know how Ling Han had bewitched Lu Yutong, but he believed that once he had publicly defeated Ling Han, this extremely stunning beauty would naturally be able to see Ling Han's true colors. Ling Han once again nodded towards Lu Yutong, and the icy beauty finally stepped back. This little female attendant of his was really quite interesting. Ling Han smiled. Once he turned towards Qingxiang though, his expression became cautious. The gap of a whole 5 layers was big, very big. If Lu Yutong suppressed her power to the 4th layer of body refining tier and battled with Qingxiang, she would only be able to grit her teeth in defeat. Ling Han dared to accept this challenge because he knew a martial arts technique called Lone Wolf's Blood. With every injury, the user would be able to erupt with power that surpassed his actual cultivation level. The heavier the injury, the stronger the power he erupted with would be. In his past life, Ling Han would only be able to take a large amount of alchemical medicines and pills to heal his injuries, but currently, he had no such healing medicines. But that was okay, because he now possessed an even more powerful secret art. Indestructible Heaven Scroll. Come! Ling Han beckoned with a finger. Kama had already cast away the glory of a warrior of the heaven tier. The current him was only a minor martial artist of the 4th layer of body refining tier. Everything was back to square one. Qingxiang naturally would not treat Ling Han seriously. He started to casually circle around Ling Han, a cold smile on his face. He could easily, effortlessly suppress a mere minor character of the 4th layer of body refining tier. Brother, thrash him! Cheng Hao could not help calling out. Presently, his face hurt a lot. Moreover, he had even been forced to kneel and crawl around like a dog in front of everyone, making an embarrassment out of himself. He was naturally filled with furious hatred towards Ling Han. There was one person who shared that feeling, and that was Shen Ziyan. She too hated Ling Han to the bone. Qingxiang nodded and said, "All of you should take a good look. This is what happens to all who dare to defy our Qing clan." The corners of his lips lifted upwards in a cruel smile, and a powerful punch flew towards Ling Han. Ling Han gave a snort and clenched his fist before similarly flying towards his opponent. What? Seeing such a scene, everyone thought that Ling Han had gone crazy. A head-on power battle between the 4th layer and the 9th layer of body refining tier, this was an extremely stupid move. Previously, wasn't Ling Han very smart? With his fearful ability to foresee attacks, he easily dispersed Qing Hao's attack's power, and thrashed the latter like he was a dog. But now against the much stronger Qingxiang, he actually cast away this kind of battle technique? Did he think he would not lose fast enough? At this moment, even Lu Yutong felt she was about to lose faith in Ling Han, because this kind of power battle was the purest, truest display of the strength of cultivation levels and disparity in strength. Only Ling Han was filled with confidence. He of course would not be deliberately looking to be beaten. Come! Pun! The 2 fists crashed into each other. If the movement was slowed down by 100 times, it could be clearly seen that, underneath the jolt of power, the skin on Ling Han's arm rose and fell like the water surface from his fist all the way to his shoulder. Following a pa sound, the rupturing of arteries caused his whole arm to instantly become badly mangled. The power gap truly was much too wide. Tang tang tang! Ling Han retreated a whole 7 steps before he finally regained his balance. Ha 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 ha! Trash will always be trash! Qingxiang laughed coldly. Ever since Ling Han had entered the academy, he had become the target of bullying for him and Cheng Hao. Ling Han thought he could bring about a change in his fate now. In his dreams, Ling Han's face was completely expressionless as the indestructible heaven scroll continued to circulate within his body, and the injury of his arm rapidly healed. However, due to the fresh blood covering his arm, his quickly recovering injuries could not be seen. And with his injury, Lone Wolf's blood also started to circulate within his body, causing his power to rise to a new level. 5th layer of body refining tier. Ling Han gave a shout and once again took the initiative, rushing towards Qingxiang. It's no use, Ling Trash, you will be a piece of trash your whole life. Qingxiang laughed loudly and his fist flew towards Ling Han once again. Pun! The 5th layer of body refining tier would still be vulnerable against the 9th layer of body refining tier, so once again, Ling Han was forced to retreat, spilling fresh blood. The right arm that had just healed became badly mangled once again. Qingxiang looked a little surprised, because he sensed that his opponent's power had increased by a large margin compared to the previous attack, although he was still much weaker than himself. Ling Han simultaneously circulated indestructible heaven scroll and stimulated lone wolf's blood. His eyes shone like a battle wolf's, filled with killing intent. Sixth layer of body refining tear. Injury upon injury, Ling Han's power once again increased. He roared and once again threw himself at Qing Xiang. Qing Xiang's strength was extraordinary, but underneath Ling Han's stare, he actually felt a little frightened. He immediately grew angry. This was a piece of trash. For him to actually feel even a bit of dread towards a piece of trash, it was completely laughable. He wanted to defeat Ling Han in one attack and injure him heavily, so that the latter wouldn't be able to get up again. Pun! 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 The two fighters continuously attacked each other. Naturally, Ling Han was at the obvious disadvantage, and with every encounter, his opponent would cause him to suffer heavy injuries. And yet, he would immediately regain his battle spirit each time and retaliate. Hi's determination was unbelievable. Moreover, Ling Han's attacks were becoming fiercer and stronger, and slowly, he was actually able to fight on even footing with Qing Xiang. Seventh layer of body refining tear. Qing Xiang was very clear on the fact that Ling Han's power had shockingly risen to the level of seventh layer of body refining tear. Thankfully though, after increasing to such a degree, Ling Han's power did not increase any further. Otherwise, Qing Xiang would truly start to feel fear. It couldn't be helped. After all, the lone wolf's blood also had its limits. It could only help Ling Han increase his power by 3 layers. However, the 7th layer of body refining tear against the 9th layer of body refining tear, the gap in power had shrunk to only 2 layers difference. Chapter 19. Chapter 19. Trampled beneath my feet. Ling Han was now completely covered in blood. His temporary increase in power to the 7th layer of body refining tear was obtained through sustaining serious injuries. He was now like an injured lone wolf. The more he was injured, the more he refused to surrender. At first, it was as if the crowd was there just to watch a free show. But when they saw Ling Han being repeatedly injured yet continued to retaliate, their feelings, for some reason, were affected by his performance. Even if Ling Han was a piece of trash, he was a piece of trash that deserved their respect. What kind of person could have such determination and unyielding will? To be unyielding even as his blood spilled, to be dauntless facing any and all setbacks. Before they knew it, everyone's thoughts started to lean towards Ling Han, secretly hoping that he would emerge victorious. In the world of martial artists, the weak did not deserve to be pitied, but an unyielding warrior would be able to gain respect. Ling Han used his blood and strong will to obtain something that his predecessor had longed for the most: respect. This was also the reason why Ling Han had stubbornly decided to fight this battle, and even chosen such a stupid method, a head-on clash. Of course, only he was aware that his current condition was not as horrible as everyone was thinking. Indestructible Heaven Scroll was circulating within his body and continuously healing his injuries, so they looked much worse than they in fact were. However, even if they already somewhat recovered by now, the injuries he suffered were in no way faked. He was in agonizing pain, as if a fire was slowly burning up his spirit, but it was also this pain that allowed him to erupt with power that far exceeded his actual cultivation level. He had to continuously take return origin pills, battle and keep up the continuous circulation of indestructible Heaven Scroll. All this led to too large a depletion of his origin power. Ling Han was repeatedly forced to retreat, but he would keep on charging back into battle. As his fresh blood splattered, his indomitable willpower had affected a large part of the surrounding crowd. Some of the girls had even started shedding tears, asking Ling Han to stop fighting. "Why won't you fall?" The longer Qing Xiang fought, the more flustered he became. How could Ling Han be so determined? Why was it that, no matter how much he was wounded, he refused to fall? This fight put a great pressure on Qing Xiang. The power of the 7th layer of body refining tear was enough to be a threat to him, and with the repeated confrontations between them, his internal organs were also boiling over, causing him extreme discomfort. He roared and attacked with both his fists. He had finally used a martial arts skill, wanting to take down Ling Han as fast as possible. It was one of Qing Clan's special skills, expert armed fist. Double peaks piercing the ear. A martial artist that uses martial arts skills and a martial artist that does not are at two completely different levels of power. Just like cultivation techniques, martial arts skills could also be categorized into heaven, earth, black and yellow grades respectively. A good yellow grade martial arts skill can roughly double the user's power. Every major grade was further divided into 3 minor levels: high, medium, and low. For example, a yellow grade low-level martial arts skill would increase the user's power by around 30%. A medium level one would be able to raise the user's power by around 40 to 60%, while a high level skill would increase the user's power around 70 to 100%. The expert armed fist was a yellow grade medium level martial arts skill. It could increase the user's power by around 50%, and the last 3 secret moves could increase the user's power by up to 60%. Ling Han knew countless martial arts skills, even the rarely seen heaven-grade high-level martial arts skill. She knew 7 of them, and each could increase the user's power by 10 times. However, due to the limitations of his current power level, he had no way to use these skills. It was not just heaven-grade skills that he couldn't use. Even earth-grade or black-grade skills were also out of the question for him due to his current limited cultivation. So, he could only use yellow-grade martial arts skills. To use black-grade martial arts skills, the user had to at least have the cultivation level of Gushing Spring Tier. He tightened both fists, and moved into an attacking stance. High-level yellow-grade martial arts skill, Dashing Panther Fist. Pun! A loud noise was heard, and the two fighters had already exchanged their attacks. Their speed was extremely fast. Aside from Liu Yutong, only a few of the students who happened to have the cultivation of the 9th layer of body refining tier could see it clearly. Meanwhile, the majority of the crowd could only see that, after this confrontation, Qing Xiang's body somehow flew outwards. See! Everyone in the area was struck speechless as they sharply breathed in. Qing Xiang had actually flown out due to the force behind Ling Han's attack. What kind of unfathomable event was this? Meanwhile, even though Ling Han's body was entirely covered in fresh blood, he had only taken a few steps backward. What a grand reversal of the situation! What was going on? Qing Xiang had had the upper hand all this while. So why was it that he was actually horribly defeated once he used a martial arts skill? But no matter how far their thoughts traveled, none of them would be able to guess that Ling Han had just used a high-level yellow-grade martial arts skill. How could that be possible? Even the 2 great clans of Grey Cloud Town only possessed medium-level yellow-grade martial arts skills. If an ordinary person managed to learn a low-level yellow-grade martial arts skill, he'd already die happy. Only Liu Yutong's beautiful eyes flashed with understanding. She was the only person who clearly knew that 3 mysterious arts Ling Han taught her was a heaven-grade cultivation technique. Thus, what would be strange about Ling Han knowing a high-level yellow-grade martial arts skill? Qing Xiang moaned, wanting to get back up. However, the power behind Ling Han's attack was really terrifying. Even just moving caused him to continuously throw up blood. Just now, when they repeatedly exchanged their attacks, Qing Xiang's internal organs had already suffered from huge tremors, and the one attack just moments ago had immediately caused all the damage he had already sustained to blow up. This was a deciding attack that transformed quantity into quality. No, this isn't possible! Qing Hao's expression was one of utter disbelief. His older brother was an elite of the 9th layer of body refining tier. How could he lose to a piece of trash? This was definitely not real. Ling Han walked towards Qing Xiang. With every step, the injuries he had suffered were quickly healing. Once he was right in front of Qing Xiang, all the injuries were fully healed, a testament to the great power of indestructible Heaven Scroll. I've lost! With everyone looking at them, there was no way for Qing Xiang to deny the fact that he had lost. He glared ferociously at Ling Han, his face filled with denial. He could not understand how Ling Han had defeated him. Ling Han slowly raised his leg, moving it above Qing Xiang. What are you planning to do? Qing Xiang could not help revealing a fearful expression. Was Ling Han planning to step on his face? Don't go too far. Too far? Ling Han snorted, one foot already firmly placed on Qing Xiang's face. You, as a cultivator of the 9th layer of body refining tier, fighting with me, it isn't considered too far? The first thing your younger brother told me was to get lost, and the first thing you did was to accuse me of using despicable means. Isn't that considered too far? So you're the only ones allowed to do as you like? There is no such logic on this world. Since your skills are inferior, you should speak less rubbish. He put more strength into his foot, and Qing Xiang immediately let out a pained groan. However, what he felt more was shame he had actually been trampled underneath someone's foot. Furthermore, this person was the publicly acknowledged trash of the academy. Of course, after today, Ling Han would definitely be able to clear his name as a piece of trash, but this all came at the price of stepping on Qing Xiang's face. This was even more unacceptable to Qing Xiang. People in the surrounding area too were lost for words. Before this, they had only hoped that Ling Han would emerge victorious, but who amongst them had truly believed that Ling Han would win? They could not help recalling Lu Yutong's words in less than 3 months. Ling Han would become an existence that all of them could only look up to. Perhaps 3 months might not even be necessary. Presently, there was already quite a number of them looking up to him. Ling Han, you will definitely regret this, Qing Xiang said in a furious, poisonous voice. To actually be trampled beneath the foot of a piece of trash, this was a shame that he would never be able to clear from his reputation. Is that so? Ling Han smiled faintly. This kind of threat was completely meaningless on him. Beg for mercy, he said. If your attitude is sincere enough, I will spare you, otherwise you may have to lie down here for quite a long time. You dash. Qing Xiang felt as if he was about to explode. Ling Han actually wanted him to beg for mercy in front of all these people. Chapter 20. Chapter 20, Pill Concoction. If you're not going to beg for mercy, then just continue to lie down there. Lying down is nothing too tiring anyway. Ling Han spoke calmly. He has always been the kind of person to return the kindness of others tenfold. However, he was also the type that, if offended, would return it back by 10 times as well. Since Qing Xiang and his brother wanted to bully him, then he would trample all over them, making them into complete fools. Lying down isn't tiring? Lying down indeed was not tiring, but if there was a foot stepping on your face, then the issue was no longer about whether it was tiring or not. Qing Xiang gritted his teeth tightly to the point that even his gums started bleeding. Ka ka ka! The grinding of his teeth could clearly be heard. If he could, he really wanted to tear Ling Han into a million pieces, but for now, he could only lower his prideful head and say, I'm sorry, please spare me. You're speaking too softly, I can't hear you, Ling Han said calmly. I'm sorry, please spare me, Qing Xiang cried out loudly. As these words left his mouth, he felt as if his entire person was about to fall apart. All his pride, dignity and self-esteem as the eldest young master of the Qing clan had all dispersed like the popping of a bubble along with this plea for mercy. Be more sensible in future, there are some people that you can't afford to offend, Ling Han said, taking back his leg. You should feel fortunate that I'm in a generous mood now. This was considered generous? Everyone was lost for words. Qing Xiang was not Qing Hao, he was the eldest young master of the Qing clan. To shame him in such a public setting was the same as slapping the whole Qing clan. This would definitely not be settled peacefully. There would definitely arise a fierce battle between the Qing and the Ling clans. It might even become a blood feud between the two clans. It would become complete chaos. Xin Ziyan looked on, her white teeth biting fiercely on her red lips. Her current feelings were indescribably complex. They were both in the 9th layer of body refining tier, but there was a large gap between their individual ability. For example, she too had defeated many experienced martial artists in the 9th layer of body refining tier, so even if Ling Han was able to defeat Qing Xiang, that did not mean that he could defeat her. But the problem was, what was Ling Han's current cultivation level? When this guy too rose up to the 9th layer of body refining tier, who amongst those of the whole body refining tier would be able to fight with him on an equal footing? To be invincible amongst those of the same tier, that was the quality of a ruler. No, she definitely did not have any regrets. This was a piece of trash that she had already rejected a few years ago. A piece of trash that could only look up to her throughout his whole life. Ling Han walked out of the martial training court, Liu Yutong by his side as per usual. The two strolled around the academy for a while. After that, they sat down beneath a large tree. Leaning against the tree trunk, either of them spoke. After a while, Liu Yutong finally couldn't bear it anymore and said, "I never thought that you had such poor eyes, to actually like that kind of shallow, self-centered girl." Ling Han couldn't hold back his hearty laughter. He turned towards her and said, "My little attendant girl, are you jealous?" Who'd be jealous?" A red blush rose up on Liu Yutong's beautiful face, making her even more beautiful. "Don't delude yourself. Hey, is that any way to speak to your master?" Ling Han laughed. Teasing this little attendant girl of his was really quite interesting sometimes. Liu Yutong rolled her eyes, but very quickly changed the topic, and said, "Do you plan to continue to stay in Grey Cloud Town?" This place really was too small to fit the dragon that Ling Han was. Ling Han laughed and said, "I'll go take a look at Huyang Academy after a while. Father hopes that I can go there to step on the faces of the so-called geniuses there." Liu Yutong was struck speechless, before saying, "You can't defeat even me now, and you actually want to go to step all over all the geniuses of Huyang Academy? You should be aware that I am not the strongest fighter in Huyang Academy." "You'll see when we get there." Ling Han no longer spoke any grand words. Only he himself was aware of the great, terrifying potential that he possessed. When the sun had set, the two returned to the Ling clan residence. "You little brat dash!" Just as they were entering the main hall, they saw Ling Dongxing striding towards them, his expression extremely grim. At first, Ling Han thought that his skipping class today was discovered by his father. Just when he was about to say something, Ling Dongxing had already rushed to him and embraced him tightly before laughing heartily and saying, "You thrashed the two brats from the Qin clan, yet you didn't immediately return to inform your old man and let me be happy too." Ling Han released the breath he was holding before he said, "Then, father, how did you find out? This is no small matter. How could I not find out about it after such a long while?" Ling Dongxing stopped his hearty laughter, regained his serious expression, and said, "Honor, you really show much promise. The 4th layer of body refining tier actually defeated the 9th layer of body refining tier. However, this is much too shocking. I'm worried that some people would spare no expense just to eliminate you." Ling Han nodded. Most people's attitudes towards geniuses would be filled with admiration and respect, but he no longer belonged to the level of geniuses. Rather, he was more like a freak, to an inconceivable extent at that. "I've released information saying that you're actually in the 7th layer of body refining tier. You had just deliberately kept a low profile in the past," Ling Dongxing continued. This kind of explanation was actually full of gaps. After all, keeping a low profile and being trash were two different matters. But when compared with the event when a person only in the 4th layer of body refining tier defeated the 9th layer of the body refining tier, wouldn't this explanation be easier to accept for the public? Moreover, the strength Ling Han displayed in the last stages of the fight was the 7th layer of the body refining tier, so this kind of explanation would be easier to believe. "You don't have to go to the academy tomorrow to avoid others from seeing any discrepancies," Ling Dongxing said. Anyone of the element gathering tier would be able to tell with one look what Ling Han's actual cultivation level was. If that happened, the lie would immediately be exposed. This was exactly what Ling Han wanted. However, the problem now was that he could not only not go to the academy, he couldn't even leave the clan residence. Because he had played too much today, there would definitely be a lot of interested parties in Grey Cloud Town. There may even be some who would watch out for his appearance from nearby the Ling clan residence. There was only one solution, and that was to have his actual cultivation level really reach the 7th layer of body refining tier. In this way, the lie would become the truth. Since he couldn't leave the residence anyways, Ling Han decided to place his full focus on cultivating. Ling Dongxing was in full support of this, and under Ling Han's request, he provided him with a large amount of monetary funds. Meanwhile, Ling Han had Lu Yutong go purchase medicinal ingredients as he would be personally concocting an alchemical pill. The alchemical pill that Ling Han wanted to concoct was named the Little Cloud and Water Pill. Taking this pill would greatly increase the cultivation speed of a martial artist in body refining tier. While this pill could be bought, the medicinal effects were too poor. Ling Han had taken one, and it was at most only half as good as the one he concocted. You can do a lot of things if you have enough money. Lu Yutong very quickly returned with the medicinal ingredients Ling Han had requested, also bringing with her an alchemy furnace. It's a bit challenging for a martial artist at 4th layer of body refining tier to concoct pills, Ling Han murmured. Ordinarily, one could only start concocting pills once they reached the 7th layer of body refining tier, at least. Otherwise, if there was not enough origin power to support the concocting process, one would not be able to continue concocting when they reach the advanced stage of the process. Thus, the result would naturally be failure. Looks like I have to simultaneously take return origin pills and concoct the pill. He skillfully separated the various ingredients, his hands moving at such an extremely fast pace that Lu Yutong, who had been standing at the side, felt that her eyes were blurring. Now, she finally believed that Ling Han knew how to concoct pills and was not just knowledgeable in the theory of alchemy. Was there anything this guy didn't know? Ling Han threw several medicinal ingredients into the furnace. However, he did not dump everything inside. He had only threw about 1/3 of the ingredients on hand, then his right hand jolted, he gave a snort, and suddenly a flame appeared on his extended palm. Ignition. This was the basic ability every alchemist should have. It was also why every alchemist needed to have a fire alignment spirit base. Chapter 21. Chapter 21, 5th layer of body refining tier. The reason why concocting pills was a difficult task was because it was difficult to control the temperature level. Should one use firewood to start the fire, it would be very difficult to control the heat level of the flames, let alone achieve the precision required to concoct pills. In theory, the higher the grade of alchemical pill, the stricter the requirements for controlling the fire. Precision aside, the alchemist also had to be able to stimulate the heat to an extreme level. The alchemist's cultivation had to be very high to achieve this. Ordinarily speaking, an alchemist should be able to concoct pills that are at most one level higher than his own cultivation level. For example, for Ling Han, who was in body refining tier, his limit should be concocting middle-level yellow-grade pills. However, the primary requirement was the ability to control fire. There were also certain requirements for the heat level, which was why too low a cultivation level would make concocting pills impossible, the minimum being the 7th layer of body refining tier. Ling Han was only in the 4th layer of body refining tier, and yet he dared to concoct a pill. The reason why he dared to do that lay in his spirit base. As he possessed the 5 elements mixed chaos lotus, the origin power within his body could be transformed to gold, wood, water, fire or earth alignment. The heat level he could control was not really very high, the maximum level being 400 degrees, but it was enough to concoct the little cloud and water pill. It's worthy of the name. 5 elements mix chaos lotus. The 5 elements are in a mutually dependent relationship with one another, and seemingly inexhaustible. Ling Han praised silently. An ordinary fire alignment spirit base in the body refining tier would only be able to release flames that could reach the maximum temperature of 200 degrees. Even he who had had a pure fire alignment spirit base in his last life was no different. The 5 elements mixed chaos lotus could transform into any of the 5 elemental alignments, which was something that the 9 young fire spirit base could never compare with. It was indeed worthy of the name of immortal grade spirit base. Ling Han's left hand continued to spin, heating every nook and cranny of the furnace. The heat required for various parts of the furnace was different. In future, to concoct high-grade alchemical pills would require a furnace with high specifications, such as the level of heat penetration and the level of heat endurance, to name a few of them. A good furnace was something over which any self-respecting alchemist would go to war. Occasionally, he would throw in one of the medicinal ingredients into the furnace. Sometimes, he would open the lid of the furnace, while at others, he would keep it closed. His practice movements were carried out at such a fast speed that they would just be a blur in any observer's eyes. Lu Yutong, who had been standing at the side, was already speechless, her eyes wide. Thank goodness she wasn't an alchemist, and so did not really have much of an understanding of this profession. Otherwise, if she had known that the lowest requirement for an alchemist's cultivation level was the 7th layer of body refining tier, then she would definitely be even more shocked. Then again, she was already shocked enough by now. A few more times, and she might pass out due to extreme shock. The higher the temperature of the flames, the more origin power the alchemist had to use. Very quickly, Ling Han felt that he was nearing exhaustion, so he quickly tossed a return origin pill into his mouth, chewed it up, and immediately felt origin power enter his body bit by bit, allowing him to continue the process. Time passed slowly, and Ling Han continuously took return origin pills. After 2 hours, Ling Han suddenly gave a loud shout and bit his tongue, fresh blood spilling. Under the power of the lone wolf's blood, his origin power suddenly rose up to another level, causing the heat level of the flames to rise up to about 600 degrees. Pill completed! He suddenly retracted the flames. The final surge of the flames was the finishing touch that increased the effects of the alchemical pill by about 5%. Unfortunately, the 400-degree temperature was his limit. He could only injure himself to stimulate the lone wolf's blood if he wanted to release a heat of 600 degrees. He lifted the lid of the furnace, and a faint medicinal fragrance instantly wafted out. Lu Yutong could not help coming closer to peek into the furnace. There were exactly 17 round vermilion-colored pills inside. The surface of the pills sparkled temptingly, appearing almost translucent. Although she herself did not know anything about alchemy, she was certain that Ling Han had succeeded in concocting the pills. "You really are a freak," she said, a strange expression in her eyes. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "You'll get used to it soon." Lu Yutong wasn't sure whether she would become crazy or grow numb under the continuous assault of these miracles. Ling Han took a little cloud and water pill, swallowed it in one mouthful, and immediately began cultivation. Hong! The little cloud and water pill was like calcium oxide, whereas the environmental qi was like water. The encounter between the two immediately gave rise to a powerful reaction, leading to the assault of a terrifying amount of spiritual qi. The 5 elements mixed chaos lotus within Ling Han's dantian stirred lightly, accepting the incoming qi and absorbing it at a frightening speed. Only an immortal-grade spirit base would be able to withstand such intensity, Ling Han thought while circulating 5 elements heaven-grade skill to transform the incoming spiritual qi into his own origin power, filling his limbs and veins with it. An hour later, the medicinal effects of the first little cloud and water pill were used up. Ling Han swallowed a second pill and continued cultivating. However, by the time the medicinal effects of the third little cloud and water pill were used up as well, Ling Han's tolerance level had also reached its limits. He felt extremely tired, and the upper half of his body immediately toppled over as he fell asleep on the floor right where he was. Lu Yutong, who had been beside him all the while, could not help shaking her head. She then helped Ling Han onto the bed, and attentively took off his shoes and covered him with the quilt. She then exited the inner chamber, and fell asleep on a chair in the outer chamber. She was a very responsible follower whose main duty was to protect Ling Han. The night passed. When Ling Han opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the canopy of his bed, which caused him to be slightly surprised because he had no recollection of climbing onto the bed last night. But this was not important. He smiled, because his cultivation level had once again risen to a new level as he broke through to the 5th layer of body refining tier. The reason why he could break through 2 layers yesterday was because the past cultivation rate of this body was too slow. The first time the 5 elements mixed Chaos Lotus was active at full power naturally led to a one-time eruption. Of course, this would not happen again in future. You've broken through again! When Ling Han stepped out of the internal chamber, Lu Yutong immediately looked as if she had seen a ghost. She was even stumbling over her words, her eyes fixed in a stare directed at Ling Han. This is only the body refining tier, this speed is normal, Ling Han said, completely calm. Hell, it's normal. Lu Yutong was about to go crazy. In any case, as someone who had a heaven-grade spirit base, she spent 10 days to break through to the second layer of body refining tier once she stepped onto the path of a cultivator. As for breaking through from the 4th layer to the 5th layer of body refining tier, it took her 25 days. How could 25 days' time compare to a single night? You're not going to break through to the 6th layer of body refining tier tomorrow, are you? Lu Yutong asked suddenly. Ling Han thought for a moment, before he shook his head and said, No. Hearing this, Lu Yutong finally released the breath she was holding. If Ling Han said yes, she really might have gone crazy. I should be able to the day after tomorrow. Ling Han continued after a slight pause. Monster! He had to be a monster. Lu Yutong stared at him resentfully, determined that she would never try to guess this guy's cultivation speed again. Anyways, she decided she would just pretend that he's a monster, so that no matter what speed he cultivated with, she would not think it strange in any way. Ling Han laughed. After having breakfast, he once again began cultivating behind closed doors. However, there were limits to one's vitality. He could not possibly cultivate without end. Thus, even if he had started cultivation during daytime, in truth, it did not really increase his cultivation speed by much. However, he was now fighting against time, so it'd be good even if there was only a minuscule increase in his cultivation speed. Meanwhile, Lu Yutong's progress was also extremely rapid. With the aid of a heaven-grade cultivation skill, she would be able to reach the peak period of the 9th layer of element gathering tier within 2 months at most, and even she herself was in a state of disbelief over this kind of cultivation speed. Chapter 22. Chapter 22, Trouble from Within the Clan. Lu Yutong had once believed that she had to be 19 or even 20 years old before she could break through to Gushing Spring tier. This was already quite fast. In the whole history of Rain Country, there were very, very few that could compare with her. But now, she had a very high chance of breaching this gap at the age of 18. Even though it was only the difference of 2 years, just how old was she? It would be shocking enough for a cultivator of her age to speed up his or her breakthrough by a few months, but she had sped up her breakthrough by 2 whole years. This was all because of Ling Han. However, when you compare this kind of progression rate with Ling Han's own, then it really was nothing worth mentioning. From the 2nd layer to the 4th layer of body refining tier, he spent 1 night. From the 4th layer to the 5th layer of body refining tier, 1 night. From the 5th layer to the 6th layer of body refining tier, 2 nights. When others talk about cultivating, they'd be talking about months or even years spent cultivating. But for Ling Han, his cultivation rate was counted in days. He was such a freak. Ling Han only laughed and said, This cultivation speed can't really be considered fast. There are some demonic beasts that are already element gathering tier at birth, some are even gushing spring tier. These creatures are in existence that have been blessed by the heavens. Are there really such demonic beasts? Lu Yutong's beautiful eyes widened. There were actually demonic beasts that were even stronger at birth than she was now. Of course. Ling Han nodded. He paused, then continued, I have seen historical records depicting that some demonic beasts, which are already extinct, were even at heaven tier at birth. They were born invincible. Lu Yutong did not believe him. She asked, Since they were already in heaven tier at birth, then why would they become extinct? The world has its own rules. Who would be able to fight against time? Ling Han shook his head. In his last life, it was because he did not want to just die and rot that he had resolutely stepped onto a dangerous path, seeking a way to break through to shattering void tier. There are too many mysteries on this land that can easily erase even those in heaven tier. In his previous life, when he had been a powerful existence of heaven tier, there were many places that he dared not venture to, fearing that he could fall from the sky at every turn there. After 2 days of hard cultivation, Ling Han exerted more effort to complete accumulating in the 5th layer of body refining tier. He then easily reached the 6th layer of body refining tier. Because he had already walked this familiar path in his last life, the comprehension of his cultivation was a problem that he needed not think about. However, from the 6th layer to the 7th layer of body refining tier, this is a tiny, little leap. 3 days won't be enough, I need 4 days, or maybe even 5 days' time. Ling Han gave a sigh. He'd just have to continue working hard at cultivation for another 4 or 5 days. Beside him, Liu Yutong, who had been listening to Ling Han's resentful complaints, experienced a sudden impulse to go crazy. This freak! 1 day later, Ling Han had reached the early period of the 6th layer of body refining tier. On the 2nd day, he had already reached the middle period. On the 3rd day, he was in the late period. On the 4th day, he had achieved the peak of the 6th layer of body refining tier. He did not drag it into the 5th day. Ling Han began to break through and, less than an hour later, he had stepped into the 7th layer of body refining tier. A 16-year-old with the cultivation of 7th layer of body refining tier, in Rain Country, such a cultivator would be considered acceptable. Moreover, if anyone was told that Ling Han had been in the 2nd layer of body refining tier and spent 8 days to break through to the 7th layer of body refining tier, they would definitely not believe it. Thus, even Liu Yutong, who had observed the whole process, was absent-minded, her expression distant. When she walked, her movements made it look like she was floating on air. She had truly been shocked. I can finally go out. Ling Han stretched. Now that he had a youthful body, his mentality too became youthful. After being confined to his chamber for 7 days, he felt as if he was a fierce tiger that had been imprisoned. Let's go see father, the Qing clan should have acted by now, he murmured. It was quite coincidental. Although Ling Dongxing had been so busy that he was nowhere to be found these few days, today he happened to be sitting in his study. However, his mood appeared to be very bad, his brows wrinkled in a deep frown. Father, I guess the Qing clan has made their move? Ling Han asked directly. Ling Dongxing did not raise his head to look at him. He only gave a nod, continuing to write something on a piece of paper. Is the situation very bad? Ling Han asked. Ling Dongxing heaved a sigh before finally putting his pen down and saying, It's very bad. Though our Ling clan has numerous properties, there are only 2 that are most profitable to the clan. One is the mine, the other is the medicine shop. Ling Han knew that the Ling clan owned a copper mine. The ownership of this mine fell into the hands of the Ling clan only 30 years ago. The Ling clan had paid an extremely heavy price to obtain this mine, as many powerful warriors of the clan had died in the process. As for the medicine shop, it would purchase lower-grade medicinal pills from Heaven's Medicine Pavilion and resell them to customers at a price a little higher than the original price. Although this was only a simple purchase and resale trade, because there was an enormous market for medicinal pills, this was a major source of income for the clan. The actual profit from selling each pill might have been small, but the number of transactions more than made up for it. The weakness of the medicine shop was that it completely relied on the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. However, because the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion wanted to maintain a mutually beneficial relationship with the locally influential parties, the 2 great clans of the town could each obtain some pills to sell. 5 days ago, our mine had been attacked by an unknown party, leading to quite a few casualties. Now everyone is in a state of anxiety. Even though we increased wages, there are not many who are willing to enter the mine. Ling Dongxing continued to say. Furthermore, Alchemist Ma from the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion had suddenly started making things difficult for us. He said that the batch of medicinal pills sent from headquarters this time has been delayed on the road for some reason and the delivery will be late. Now our stock of pills in the warehouse is close to being completely sold out. If the situation continues and we still aren't able to restock, then the medicine shop can only be temporarily closed. Once the medicine shop closed its doors, the shop's reputation would definitely be affected. Even if it once again opened its doors to do business in the future, some customers would definitely be lost. These 2 days, our finances are already a bit tight. We must figure out something as quick as possible. Ling Dongxing sighed. Although the Ling clan was a large existence with various properties, their expenses were also very large. There was a saying, the poor practice cultural arts, while the rich practice martial arts. Cultivation was an extremely expensive endeavor. And now, the 2 key businesses of the Ling clan were hit at the same time, thus the clan funds immediately became tight. If things went on like this, there would be big trouble. In fact, they may even be forced to sell off some of their less important businesses. It's done by the Qing clan, Ling Han said immediately, very certain. Ling Dongxing nodded. Their 2 greatest businesses encountered difficulties at the same time. There could never be such a huge coincidence in this world. He tapped his finger once on the table, and said, "There's also a traitor." Ling Han's eyes became cold, and he said, "Ling Zhongquan?" "That's right." He did not plan to conceal anything from his own son. He scoffed. "Once something happened to the mine, I immediately increased the numbers of the patrolling party, yet they didn't even spot the enemy. Unless someone had leaked the patrolling routes beforehand, how could this be possible?" It was likely that once Ling Zhongquan heard that Cheng Xiang and his brother had both been thrashed, he had secretly met with Cheng Wenkuan and reached some kind of agreement with the latter. Most likely it was to have Qing clan aid him in snatching the position of clan head. Though only he himself knew what kind of humiliating terms he'd agreed to in exchange for their assistance. "I've made a lunch appointment with Alchemist Ma of the Heavens Medicine Pavilion. I'd definitely have to give him some benefits. Otherwise, the clan would really be in a big trouble," Ling Dongxing continued to say. "Alchemist Ma? Ma de Jun?" Ling Han could not help the strange expression on his face, as he said, "I'll accompany you, father. Your duty now is to concentrate on cultivation, unless you reach the 7th layer of body Pu." Ling Dongxing finally raised his head to look directly at Ling Han. This one look caused him to choke, his expression slack. Had Lu Yutong seen his reaction, she would definitely feel very comforted. She couldn't very well be the only person to be shocked by Ling Han's cultivation speed, right? Chapter 23. Chapter 23 Thoughtless. Han, are you've already reached the 7th layer of body refining tier," Ling Dongxing stammered. If someone had told him in the past that one day he would be shocked speechless by someone in the 7th layer of body refining tier, he'd definitely give the speaker a good, solid slap. But now, it was himself he wanted to give a good, solid slap, to make sure that the sight before him was real and he wasn't merely dreaming. "Yes, so you do not have to worry anymore, father," Ling Han smiled. Ling Dongxing's face twitched, but after a while, he could not stop himself from laughing long and loud. It was as if all the worries that had troubled his mind these few days had evaporated. His son had shown such promise, what else did he need to worry about? Good son, good son! He was unbearably excited. He finally believed that his son truly had the ability to help him rescue his wife. "Then, tonight we'll head to the dinner together," Ling Dongxing said with a nod. Now that his son was showing more and more promise, the position of clan head definitely would be passed down to his son in future, thus it'd be good to have Ling Han follow by his side and learn through observation. Ling Han kept up the smile on his face. When he imagined Alchemist Ma seeing him later tonight, he could practically see the thunderstruck expression on the latter's face. That night, Ling Dongxing and his son, accompanied by 4 attendants, arrived at Xianyu House. This was where Ling Dongxing had invited Alchemist Ma for dinner. While they were waiting in one of the private rooms of the restaurant, Ling Dongxing and Ling Han talked with each other. Pun! The door was suddenly pushed open, and 2 people entered. They were Ling Zhongquan and Ling Muyun. "What are the 2 of you doing here?" Ling Dongxing said coldly. "The clan is in such big trouble, how could I not come?" Ling Zhongquan did not wait to be invited before sitting down and saying to Ling Dongxing, "I'd advise you to step back from this issue, and leave this matter for me to handle. You! Ling Dongxing laughed coldly and said, Why? You must have offended Alchemist Ma in some way. Otherwise, how could it be that he would make trouble for our clan for no reason? Ling Zhongquan spoke slowly, then gesturing at Ling Muyun said, This boy went to be examined yesterday. He has a great potential for fire control. Thus, he has already been accepted by Alchemist Ma as an apprentice. After a few years' hard work, Alchemist Ma would take him in as an official disciple. In the future, he would become an alchemist. Ling Muyun walked up to stand proudly beside Ling Zhongquan. There was immeasurable pride on his face. After the trouble caused by Ling Han, he had lost the chance to enroll into Huyang Academy. But who would have thought that when a door closed, a window would open? He actually had a great potential for fire control, so there was a high chance that he would become an alchemist in future. Alchemist, the most powerful, most noble profession in the whole of Grey Cloud Town, no, the whole of Rain Country. Ling Zhongquan was very proud. His two sons weren't even able to compare with Ling Dongxing, but that was all right, for his grandson was much more outstanding than Ling Han. Pooh! He looked closely at Ling Han for a moment before suddenly gasping in shock. This, what was this? The 7th layer of body refining tear? No, he must have seen wrongly. How could Ling Han be in the 7th layer of body refining tear? Ling Zhongquan could not help rubbing his eyes a few times and taking another close look at Ling Han. However, the powerful air around Ling Han was still the same. 7th layer of body refining tear through and through. Did this brat take some kind of godly medicine? Ling Zhongquan could not control the violent twitching of his wrinkled face. He had truly experienced a tremendous shock. Grandfather, are you all right? Ling Muyun felt that his grandfather was behaving very oddly. Weren't they supposed to strut around now, rubbing the fact that he was going to become an alchemist in the faces of Ling Dongxing and his son? Why was his grandfather suddenly acting so silly? 7th layer of body refining tear. Ling Zhongquan stuttered out. That's right, Ling Muyun was in the 7th layer of body refining tear. What was so strange about that? Didn't he already know that? Ling Muyun looked strangely at Ling Zhongquan. Why was his grandfather suddenly behaving so abnormally? Not you, him! Ling Zhongquan said, pointing at Ling Han. Pooh! Ling Muyun gasped in shock. 7th layer of body refining tear? What kind of joke was this? In the clan, every member knew Ling Han's infamous reputation as a piece of trash. He had cultivated for many years, and yet had only managed to reach the 2nd layer of body refining tier. Otherwise, why else would he be labeled as trash in the clan? If Ling Han, who was now in the 7th layer of body refining tier, was considered a piece of trash, then what about him, who had only reached the 7th layer of body refining tier at 18? Was he the ultimate piece of trash? Impossible! This is definitely impossible! He muttered in complete disbelief. But he knew very well that his grandfather was in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so there was no way he could be mistaken. Haha, what do you think of my son now? Not bad, right? Ling Dongxing laughed heartily. This kind of natural talent should be good enough to enroll in the Huyang Academy, right? Hearing these words, Ling Zhongquan and his grandson's expressions became even uglier. They took advantage of the fact that Ling Dongxing was away to force Ling Han to give up the chance to enroll into Huyang Academy, and the result was running into a stone wall. Ling Dongxing was deliberately mentioning the Huyang Academy to taunt them with it. Ling Muyun was still very young, thus he couldn't remain composed and said, "What's the big deal about Huyang Academy? I have entered the world of alchemists now, and I will become the most respected man in Rain Country in the future." Is that so? Ling Han shook his head and said, I can guarantee that you will never become an alchemist's apprentice, so of course, you will never become an alchemist either. Ha ha ha, who do you think you are? Do you actually think you can influence Alchemist Ma's decision? Ling Muyun laughed coldly. He felt this was the biggest joke in the world. If Ling Han really had such ability, Then why would Alchemist Ma purposely cause trouble and delay the distribution of alchemical pills for the clan? Ling Han did not say anything else. He only smiled. After all, things would become clear later. However, even Ling Dongxing himself did not take Ling Han's threat seriously. In his opinion, although his son had truly displayed a great natural talent in the field of martial arts, he couldn't possibly have any relations with Alchemist Ma. Although the four of them all belonged to the Ling clan, they were mutually antagonistic, so how could they possibly have any common topics to converse with each other? After the short verbal battle, they each kept silent, waiting for the arrival of Alchemist Ma. However, this Alchemist Ma really liked to put on airs. After a long time, he still had not appeared. When they were nearing the limits of their patience, they finally heard footsteps from outside the door. Gee! The door opened, and a medium-sized man entered. This man could only be Alchemist Ma. There was only one alchemist in the whole of Grey Cloud Town, even more so only one surnamed Ma. Ling Dongxing, Ling Zhongquan and Ling Muyun all stood up, grasping their fists in greeting. Ling Muyun even bent and knelt in front of the newcomer and said respectfully, "Disciple Muyun hereby greets Master." An alchemist's apprentice could barely be counted as half an alchemist's disciple. "You may rise." Ma Dejun casually waved his hands, and nodded at Ling Dongxing, saying, "You don't have to waste your time on pleasantries. Let's just get down to business. I'm a very busy man. Ling Han, how dare you not greet Alchemist Ma?" Ling Muyun immediately pointed at Ling Han. He had very sharp eyes and had immediately noticed that Ling Han had not greeted Alchemist Ma. He was even just sitting there as if nothing important was going on. Ling Dongxing was very surprised. The reason he had invited Alchemist Ma to dinner tonight was to curry favor with the man and solve the medicine supply problem. But now Ling Muyun had taken advantage of and directly pointed out this weakness. Were things going to turn bad? He could not help getting angry in secret. The important thing was to settle the problem that the Ling clan was facing now. How could Ling Muyun be so petty? He suddenly felt that he really wanted to kill this little brat in one blow. Hey, he really doesn't know the rules of the game. Ling Zhongquan too harumphed. Chapter 24. Chapter 24. I have no such disciple. Ling Muyun had very fortunately taken hold of Ling Han's weakness, so he naturally would not easily give it up. He continued aggressively. Alchemist is the most respected, most dignified profession in the whole of Rain Country, yet you not only did not stand up to greet my master upon his arrival, but also continue to remain seated? How arrogant can you be? Kneel down quickly and beg my master for a punishment. Ling Dongxing frowned slightly. Alchemists were indeed very rare and held a high status in Rain Country. For example, even though this Ma Dejun was only in the 9th layer of body refining tier, as he was a yellow-grade medium-level alchemist, even strong warriors of the element gathering tier like himself and Ling Zhongquan had to show him some face and satisfy Ma Dejun's ego. Now that Ling Zhongquan and his grandson had taken advantage of this point to attack Ling Han, he really might encounter some trouble. Clasping his fists, Ling Dongxing said, "Alchemist Ma, many apologies. If my son has done anything to offend you, I hereby apologize on his behalf. As a forgiving, generous man, please do not lower yourself to the same level as my son." Ma Dejun hadn't even noticed Ling Han. He only found out what was going on after hearing Ling Muyun's reprimand, so he couldn't control his rising dissatisfaction and said, "Ling clan head, you're really quite incredible. You invited me to dinner, so I offered you due respect by coming here. Yet you actually allow your son to humiliate me? Snort, what kind of logic is this? Ling Han, kneel down now." Ling Muyun smiled coldly. He knew very well that alchemical pills were one of the most important source of income for the clan. Thus, even if Ling Dongxing did not want to, he had no choice but to concede on this issue and pressure Ling Han to do as told. Forced to kneel by his own old man, Ling Han would definitely be very depressed and unbearably sorrowful, wouldn't he? Ha 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 ha. Alchemist Ma Dash. Ling Dongxing tried again to advise Ma Dejun to let things go. Ma Dejun only raised his hand to stop Ling Dongxing from continuing to speak. He did not even look at Ling Han and only said casually, "Let your son kneel down in front of me to explain." Pun! Ling Dongxing slammed his hand heavily down on the table and said, "Alchemist Ma, I do not know what benefits you have received from the Qin clan to help them make trouble for our Ling clan. But don't you dare go too far. You actually want my, Ling Dongxing's son, to kneel down? Get lost. How dare you?" Ling Zhongquan immediately shouted loudly. "Ling Dongxing, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to bring ruin to the clan? The clan does not just belong to you alone. As someone who does not care about the big picture, what right do you have to continue to hold on to the position of clan head of the Ling clan?" Ling Dongxing's gaze turned heavy, and he said, "Who of those here is the one who does not care about the big picture? Because I consider the fact that we share the same surname of Ling, there were some things that I did not bring out into the open, yet you all bully my son in this manner. Do you really think I, Ling Dongxing, am already dead? Enough, if you're going to engage in a family squabble, then have your argument at home. I'm a very busy man." Ma Dejun interrupted. "Quickly make this brat kneel down in front of me in apology." "Ma Dejun, who are you asking to kneel?" Ling Han finally opened his mouth as he asked calmly. "Ma Dejun?" At first, Ling Zhong and Ling Muyun were both shocked, thinking secretly that Ling Han was really gutsy to actually call Alchemist Ma directly by his name. Yet immediately, they looked extremely pleased. Ling Han had completely offended Ma Dejun now. Ling Dongxing and his son were definitely finished. "Haha, I knew that this brat would bring ruin to his father. You trash, to actually call my master by his name directly, how dare you?" Ling Muyun immediately shouted. He definitely had to take advantage of such a grand opportunity to flatter Ma Dejun. However, he had not seen that Ma Dejun's expression quickly turned ugly. He had even stood up from his seat immediately. This voice, how could Ma Dejun ever forget this voice? "Kneel down dash. Pa." Ling Muyun did not even manage to finish his words before seeing Ma Dejun fly towards him like an arrow shot from a bow, raising his hand and giving him a heavy slap. Ling Muyun was slapped utterly stupid. Even Ling Dongxing and Ling Zhongquan had vacant expressions, staring blankly. If Ma Dejun wanted to hit someone, then shouldn't he be slapping Ling Han? Why had he suddenly slapped Ling Muyun instead? There must be some kind of mistake. "Ma, master!" Ling Muyun's expression practically screamed that he felt wronged. Why was he suddenly hit? Under the three observers' uncomprehending stares, Ma Dejun quickly raced to stand in front of Ling Han. Bowing, he lowered his head respectfully as if he was an obedient little lackey and said, "So the noble guest today was young Master Han. Please forgive my blindness for not managing to notice young Master Han just now." Although he had suffered a great deal because of Ling Han, he had had no idea what his name was. Zhu He Xian naturally had no need to explain anything to him. What? What? The other three members of the Ling clan all entered into petrified mode. Was this really the extremely arrogant, high and mighty Alchemist Ma from just moments ago? Why did they suddenly feel like he had become a pug dog? Furthermore, why did he address Ling Han young Master Han? Although Ma Dejun's actual cultivation level could not be considered very high, he was an alchemist. And an alchemist always commanded great respect and dignity. The other three felt as if they had been petrified. They could not believe what they were seeing and hearing at all. "This is your disciple? How overbearing!" Ling Han said, looking at Ling Han. His tone was extremely serene. However, Ma Dejun was shocked half to death. Once more, he gave another solid slap to Ling Muyun, and said, "Who do you think you are, to actually be so impolite to young Master Han? I have no such disciple. From now onwards do not address me as your master." Ling Muyun immediately put on an expression of disbelief. He had been chased out. Just because of one word from Ling Han? He recalled that Ling Han had just told him that he would never become an alchemist. Those words actually came true. "No, master, please do not chase me away. Please give me another chance. Ling Muyun pleaded earnestly, quickly throwing himself to Ma Dejun's feet. He was not a martial arts genius, and had even lost the chance to enroll at Huyang Academy. Thus, becoming an alchemist was his last chance. Otherwise, he would have to be just like his father and grandfather. The strongest he could become would only be element gathering tier, and he'd have a certain status only in the very small, very remote Grey Cloud town. Get lost! You dared to be impolite to young Master Han. I was already being merciful by not killing you, and you actually fancy that you are going to be an alchemist? Ma Dejun snorted. Even Zhu Hexian, Grandmaster Zhu, was extremely respectful facing Ling Han. If he knew that Ling Muyun actually dared to take such an attitude towards Ling Han, he may even rush over here to kill this brat with his own hands. And with one word from Grandmaster Zhu, which alchemist in the whole of Rain Country would dare to take Ling Muyun as a disciple? Ling Muyun could not control the ashen expression on his face. He was dazed, looking as if he had lost his soul. Let's go! Ling Zhongquan took hold of his grandson. He knew there was no use saying anything now. It was better for them to leave before they embarrassed themselves further. No! I'm an alchemist's apprentice. I will become an alchemist in the future. Ling Muyun struggled with all his might, as if he had gone mad. But Ling Zhongquan held him tightly. Those still remaining in the private room could only hear the screams getting farther and farther away before they finally disappeared. In the private room, Ling Dongxing looked dumbstruck, while Ma Dejun was drenched in cold sweat. He did not know if he had managed to soothe Ling Han's anger. He really dared not offend this young master. Just now, you were quite fierce facing my father, Ling Han said calmly, yet there was a strong dissatisfaction in his voice. Young Master Han, I had no idea just now that Ling Clan Head was your father. Otherwise, I would never dare to put on airs in front of Ling Clan Head. He spoke with a pained expression. I deserve death. I really am worthless. He strengthened his resolve, and actually started to slap himself repeatedly. Chapter 25. Chapter 25, Countering the Qing Clan. Ling Dongxing was already completely numb. He knew that his own son was a genius now. But to actually be someone whom an alchemist would fawn on and painstakingly curry favor with, this still caused him to be incomparably shocked. Before, Ma Dejun's attitude was one full of arrogance, superiority, and condescending. He had invited Ma Dejun repeatedly before the man finally agreed to come, and yet the first thing the latter did upon coming was to seek flaws and create problems. He had truly displayed the arrogance of an alchemist to the full extent. But now, he really dared not believe that Ma Dejun would actually treat him with such respect and courtesy. These few days that he was gone, what had actually happened to cause his son to change so much? Ling Clan Head, I truly deserve death. Please do not worry, I shall have someone deliver the medicine to you as soon as I return, Ma Dejun said very gently and cautiously. Once he recalled his previous attitude towards Ling Dongxing, he could not control the rapid beating of his heart. He was scared half to death now. Ling Han tapped one finger on the table and said, Is it the Qing clan that had you do such a thing? Hee, young Master Han, I really didn't know that Ling Clan Head was your father, and so fell under the deception of the Qing clan. You must believe me, Ma Dejun explained hurriedly. Ling Han smiled and said, I believe you. Ma Dejun immediately felt elated, but then he heard Ling Han continue to speak. You're a greedy man. Going by your personality and character, how could you actually deign to help the Qing clan without sufficient benefits? Tell me then, what benefits have you received from the Qing clan? This dash. Ma Dejun stuttered, but once he saw Ling Han's sharp gaze, he tensed up and hurriedly said, 30,000 silver coins. The Qing clan is really generous. Ling Dongxing snorted. As the head of clan, he had a deep understanding of the significance of 30,000 silver coins. The Qing clan and the Ling clan were very similar in that they both had shockingly large income, yet their spending was also extremely large. A sum of 30,000 silver coins could only be painstakingly saved up over 2-3 years' time. That the Qing clan was willing to use such an astronomical sum to hire Ma Dejun meant they were completely serious in their attempt to utterly cut off the Ling clan's lifeblood. Just as Ling Han said, Ma Dejun was a greedy man. To let him once again supply Ling clan with medicine, they would have to offer him a reward that exceeded 30,000 silver coins. But the problem was that after the Ling clan had been hit twice, they had practically expended all money they had available. So where would they be able to find 30,000 silver coins to bribe Ma Dejun with? This move may have been only a little wound to the Qing clan, but for the Ling clan, it would definitely be a fatal injury. Thank goodness he had a good son. Ling Dongxing could not help smiling. The Qing clan would never have thought that the 30,000 silver coins they had handed over was practically wasted. 30,000 coins, that's quite a lot. Ling Han looked at Ma Dejun with a faint smile. Alchemists really are quite expensive. They had to spend such an amount to be able to bribe you. Young Master Han, you jest. Ma Dejun wiped away the cold sweat beading on his forehead. He was not an idiot, so naturally he could tell that Ling Han was being sarcastic. Because of you, our Ling clan really have suffered a huge loss these few days, Ling Han said serenely. Ma Dejun immediately shivered, but a flash of inspiration passed through his brain and he hurriedly said, Although the mastermind is the Qing clan, it is undeniable that I too am responsible to some extent. Thus, allow me to hand over these 30,000 silver coins to the Ling clan to compensate for the losses the Ling clan has suffered. Ling Dongxing was astounded. A man as greedy as Ma Dejun would actually hand over the monetary bribe that he had long received. Just how terrified was he of his son? Ling Han nodded and said, This isn't a problem for you, right? How could it be? Although he felt as if his heart was bleeding, Ma Dejun was all smiles and said in embarrassment, This is something I ought to do, and it is a small token of my feelings. All right then. Ling Han nodded. I need you to do something for me. Young Master Han, say it, and it shall be done. Ma Dejun pandered to him. From tomorrow onwards, have the portion of pills usually given to the Qing clan be supplied to our Ling clan for resale, Ling Han said. When Ling Dongxing heard this, he immediately felt ecstatic. Alchemical pills were one of the two largest sources of income for the Ling clan. If they could get double the amount of their supplies, then their profits would also double accordingly. At the same time, the income of the Qing clan would be halved. Should this last for a few years, then the overall power of the Qing clan would soon fall very far from the power of the Ling clan, while the Ling clan would be able to completely defeat the Qing clan and become the most important clan in Grey Cloud Town, and also the only great clan in the town. Yes, of course. Ma Dejun replied quickly. After all he needed to do was to issue the necessary commands. He would suffer no personal loss on his part. I don't need to give you some kind of benefits in exchange? Ling Han said with a smile. Ho, young Master Han, you're really such a joker, Ma Dejun said with a dry laugh. All right, there's nothing else that I need you for, so you can go on and do your job. Ling Han nodded, sending Ma Dejun off. Why not have dinner first before leaving? Ling Dongxing said politely. After all, Ma Dejun was going to do something for them. Ma Dejun naturally dared not stay. He hurriedly waved his hands and said, No need. I should go ahead and get to work. He raised his clasped hands towards Ling Han and then towards Ling Dongxing while stepping backwards at the same time till he left the room. Honor, wouldn't treating him in this manner backfire? Ling Dongxing said. After all, Ma Dejun was still an alchemist. They didn't give him any kind of monetary benefits, and Ling Han was even rude to him. Please don't worry, father. That guy is the type that fears the strong and bullies the weak. Give him an inch and he'll take a mile, Ling Han said with a smile. Ling Dongxing did not ask Ling Han why Ma Dejun had been so fearful of and respectful towards him. His son was already all grown up, and so he naturally had his own secrets. As a father, the only thing he needed to do was to support him. Moreover, he also had to start preparing for the next step. Now, it was time for their counterattack. Alchemist Ma. Seeing Ma Dejun come out, Ling Zhongquan and his grandson emerged from the shadows, waving over at him. The grandfather and grandson duo did not depart after they'd left the restaurant. Instead, they remained in wait here. In front of Ling Han, Ma Dejun acted like a pug dog. Yet in front of others, he immediately recovered his arrogant demeanor. He snorted and said, "Do you have something to discuss with me? Alchemist Ma, you see, Mu Yun and Ling Han are brothers of the same clan. Shouldn't you be more accommodating and allow Mu Yun to continue to learn alchemical arts with you?" Ling Zhongquan said with a flattering smile. Yet Ma Dejun only laughed and said, "Chief Butler Ling, I cannot decide on this issue. If you want your grandson to become an alchemist in the future, then you must first obtain young Master Han's approval. Otherwise, it's useless even if you find another alchemist. No one would dare to take your grandson as a disciple." "What?" Ling Zhongquan and his grandson both wore an expression of utter disbelief. How could a mere piece of trash have such power? You can choose not to believe me, but this has nothing to do with me, so please do not drag me into this affair. Ma Dejun waved his hand. However, I will still offer you a word of advice. Do not oppose young Master Han on any account. Furthermore, you have no idea how fortunate you are. They were all members of Ling clan. There was no such thing as eternal enmity among family. As long as they sincerely apologized to Ling Dongxing and his son, then how could it be that they would not receive any benefits in the future? After all, Ling Han was a man that even Grandmaster Zhu Hexian, treated with respect. Chapter 26. Chapter 26. News of Earth Dragon Grass. Just as Ma Dejun had said, this matter had nothing to do with him, so once he said what he wanted to say, he quickly departed. He still had to complete the task that Ling Han had commanded him to do. "Grandfather, are we really going to do as he had said and obey Ling Dongxing and his son's commands without questions?" Ling Muyun asked, gritting his teeth. How could he resign himself to do such a thing? Ling Han was a well-known piece of trash, and for him to actually obey the commands of a piece of trash, just the mere thought of him made him feel stupid. "Of course not!" Ling Zhongquan strongly waved his hand. "I've worked so hard all these years, how could I allow a piece of trash to ruin all my hard effort? Whether that brat is a real piece of trash or had just been pretending to be one, there is no way that he can stand in the way of me taking over our Ling clan. But grandfather, what is our next move?" Ling Muyun appeared very dazed. "Wait," Ling Zhongquan said in a deep voice. "The relations between Qing clan and us are very tense now. Even though Ling Dongxing can counterattack with Ma Dejun's help, the Qing clan is not easily trifled with. Force them into a corner, and they would definitely put their all into the fight. At that moment, we will give Ling Dongxing an additional stab in the back, and shove him off the position of the clan head." Ling Muyun's face lit up upon hearing this, but his eyes were filled with a poisonous rage. "Grandfather, that brat Ling Han must be handed over to me. I want to kill him with my own hands." "You will definitely get your wish," Ling Zhongquan said with a cold smile. The next morning, Zhu Hexian once again visited the Ling clan. Now Ling Dongxing finally understood why Ma Dejun had been so reverent towards his son. It was because even a black-grade alchemist such as Zhu Hexian would stand with both hands at his sides in front of his son, the epitome of an obedient student. This solved the mystery yet caused Ling Dongxing to be even more shocked. Because, in the last case, it was only a yellow-grade alchemist, but now even a black-grade alchemist was so reverent towards his son. What was going on here? The reason behind Zhu Hexian's visit was to pass on some news to Ling Han. There was news that a stalk of earth dragon grass may have appeared on Seven Wind Mountains. When Lu Yutong had gone to purchase the ingredients for concocting the little cloud and water pill a few days ago, she had also asked Zhu Hexian about the ingredients for another pill formula. This pill formula had a total of 4 ingredients that belonged to the extremely rare category. Even Heaven's Medicine Pavilion did not have any of these ingredients in stock. Or rather, the branch in Rain Country did not have them in stock. However, based on his current rank, Zhu Hexian had no way of checking the stock of the bigger branches, not to mention transferring something over. This pill formula was the formula required to concoct a pill to heal Ling Dongxing's spirit base. The name of the pill was Restore Spirit Pill, an Earth-grade medium-level pill. Earth Dragon Grass was one of the 4 missing ingredients this pill formula required. Thus, once he received this piece of news, Zhu Hexian quickly came to personally visit the Ling residence. Of course, while one reason was to inform Ling Han of the important news, he also wanted to come and seek guidance from Ling Han. At other times, he would not dare to come and disturb Ling Han. Ling Han was naturally elated. But after he had carefully asked about the circumstances surrounding the 7 Wind Mountains, he could only decide to temporarily postpone the trip. The reason was, the person who brought the news was a strong warrior of the 9th layer of Element Gathering tier. By the time he was found by a team of herb gatherers, he was already close to death. He only managed to say, "Cave, Giant Red Snake," and "Earth Dragon Grass," before he died. Thus, this led to the conclusion that there was Earth Dragon Grass within the 7 Wind Mountains, yet there should be a giant red snake standing guard over it. It even managed to severely injure a strong warrior of the 9th layer of Element Gathering tier. Yet Ling Han knew that where there was Earth Dragon Grass, there would usually be a red-scaled dragon snake coiled nearby. The snake would absorb the weak dragon she released by the Earth Dragon Grass to slowly evolve and complete the transformation from a snake to a dragon. A mature red-scaled dragon snake would possess cultivation comparable to the 9th layer of Element Gathering tier. Furthermore, because it possessed a bit of the dragon's bloodline, its power far exceeded an ordinary warrior of the 9th layer of Element Gathering tier. It could be considered to have 1 foot in the Gushing Spring tier and was an invincible king of the Element Gathering tier. Should Ling Han enter the 7 Wind Mountains at this stage, even if he managed to find that cave, there was no way he could be an equal opponent to the red-scaled dragon snake. It would be useless even with the help of Liu Tong, unless Liu Tong had 1 foot in the Gushing Spring tier as well. He would definitely go to the 7 Wind Mountains, but he had to make full preparation for the trip. Moreover, the inner core of the red-scaled dragon snake could be refined into a transcending origin pill. Taking this pill would allow a martial artist in the Element Gathering tier to directly advance 1 layer, with the limit being the peak of the 3rd layer of Element Gathering tier. Additionally, because the red-scaled dragon snake possessed a bit of the dragon's bloodline, its blood and flesh were extremely nutritious and would allow Ling Han to grasp the Dead Tree tier, the 1st tier of the Indestructible Heaven Scroll, at a faster rate. He decided to continue working hard at cultivation and only set off towards 7 Wind Mountains once he had broken through to the Element Gathering tier. He'd also be able to make use of the inner core of the dragon snake to quickly raise his cultivation level to the 3rd layer of Element Gathering tier then, after which he would easily break through to the 4th layer. Additionally, he also had to raise his own power through actual battle experience and strengthen his foundation. While in his last life he had stood at the summit of martial arts, to be honest, he was not considered the one with the strongest battle power. There was a simple reason for that. His cultivation progress was faster than an average cultivator's because he had possessed a heaven-grade high-level spirit base, but if he battled with a warrior of the same cultivation level, he would still have to take into account his opponent's battle tactics and the level of control he had over his use of martial arts skills. In his last life, Ling Han was definitely extremely intelligent, for how else could he become the first alchemy emperor ever, a record that no one has ever managed to achieve and likely no one else will ever achieve. However, there were definitely limits to one's time and energy. He had spent most of his time on alchemy research and concocting alchemical pills. Whatever time he had left he spent on raising his cultivation level. So how much time did he have left to refine his martial arts skills? But this was no problem, for his cultivation progress was much too fast. With the additional support of alchemical pills, how could his opponents be able to compare with him? He only had to use the difference in cultivation levels to crush his opponents. He needed not use any kind of tactics. But once he reached the summit of martial arts, this weakness was revealed. In Ling Han's last life, there were in total 7 strong warriors of the heaven tier. Based purely on actual battle power, he was definitely at the bottom. The reason was the fact that he had depended on the use of alchemical pills to increase his cultivation level and didn't really have much of an actual battle experience. It could be said that his cultivation level of Heaven Tier had actually been quite hollow. Of course, if he had spent more than 100 years to continue training in martial arts skills, he would definitely be able to compensate for this inadequacy. After all, he was still too young. A 300-year-old of the Heaven Tier was still a very rare existence in history. Such people could be counted on the fingers of one hand. In this life, Ling Han no longer wanted to become this kind of paper tiger warrior, so he definitely needed to leave a deep footprint behind his every step. Each step had to be taken firmly. Ling Han had no excess thoughts. Aside from cultivating the 5 elements heaven grade skill every day, he also began to refine his martial arts skills. In his last life, he had given up on using yellow grade and black grade martial arts skills at a very early stage. He had mostly just stuck to using heaven grade martial arts skills, and only sometimes would he deign to use earth grade martial arts skills. But now, he could only use yellow grade martial arts skills. As a result, he needed to work very hard on cultivating and make himself become an indomitable ruler of all those with the same cultivation level, and not just obtain his victories by taking advantage of the difference in cultivation level between him and his opponents. However, he had in his hands a large variety of high-level martial arts skills, but very few low-level ones. That was natural. In his previous life, he had been a strong warrior of Heaven Tier. Even if he had discovered any black grade or yellow grade martial arts skills in a historical site, how would it be possible that he would train in any of them? He may flip through some of them, but there were definitely few of them. Thankfully, he had also been a martial artist that had slowly worked his way up from the bottom in his last life, so he still possessed a few low-level martial arts skills. Shocking electricity sword arts, flying fire palm arts, dashing panther fist, and exiting cloud step were all yellow-grade high-level martial arts skills. However, what caused Ling Han to feel a little embarrassed was the fact that he had not cultivated these 4 martial arts skills to the highest level in his last life, for he was always busy with concocting pills. So, he just had to start all over again. He was still young anyways. Ling Han began with shocking electricity sword arts. The reason was simple. His current cultivation level was still too low, so he needed the support of a weapon to increase his strength, and the favorite weapon of most martial artists were either a sword or a saber. Chapter 27. Chapter 27, Sword Chi. Ling Han decided to head to Balance Mountain for training. Balance Mountain was about 80 kilometers north of Grey Cloud Town. It was not a very large mountain. Even the continuous length and breadth of it measured just over 100 kilometers. There were 4 towns within the mountain's vicinity, and their residents largely depended on the mountain for their livelihood. The reason being, this mountain had both medicinal herbs as well as demonic beasts, and to a martial artist, both of these things were beneficial. Unlike the gigantic mountain range that was the 7 Wind Mountains, where the demonic beasts were extremely powerful to the point that even strong warriors of the spiritual ocean tier dared not venture too deeply, the strongest demonic beast in Balance Mountain was only in the element gathering tier, and could only be found in the innermost parts of the mountain range. Thus, as long as they did not venture too deeply into the mountain range, Balance Mountain was an excellent training grounds for a martial artist in the body refining tier. Ling Han knew very well that purely practicing would never let him train in a martial arts skill to the highest level. To achieve that, he had to experience actual battle. Although Ling Dongxing did not want his son to take risks, he also knew that it was impossible for a real martial artist to grow up protected like a plant in a greenhouse. Moreover, Liu Tong would be by Ling Han's side to protect him, so naturally he did not need to worry that they would encounter some danger. Therefore, he agreed. He was also very busy now. He was currently making preparations for the counterattack against the Qing clan while also reorganizing the Ling clan to regain power over the clan, which Ling Zhongquan had partially taken over these past few years. Ling Han and Liu Tong very quickly began their journey, setting off towards Balance Mountain. As Balance Mountain was quite close by, they did not need to bring too much baggage with them and had only brought 2-3 changes of clothing. Yet, even so, they still carried a sizable bundle, each. This caused Ling Han to miss the spatial ring from his previous life. A spatial ring seemed to be not much different from a normal ring, yet there was an incredible space within it that could accommodate a large number of items. If you were going on a trip, bringing a spatial ring along would be very convenient. However, the method to create spatial rings was long lost with the passage of time, so there was only an extremely limited number available. In his last life, only a strong warrior of at least flower blossom tier could possess one. Otherwise, even if you had very luckily obtained one, it would still bring a fatal disaster to you as its owner. A spatial ring was something extremely valuable. They traveled by foot. A distance of 80 kilometers was nothing much to a martial artist, and they only spent about 2 hours on their journey. The two of them set off in the morning, and they had already entered the vicinity of Balance Mountain by noon. They could hear the distant roars of tigers and cries of monkeys. As they looked everything over, a strongly fragrant, primitive, desolate air blew against their faces. "Let's go!" Ling Han walked in front and said, "As long as it's a demonic beast in the body refining tier, you don't have to do anything. Just leave it to me." "Very well." Lu Yutong nodded. However, Balance Mountain was not a place that was filled to the brim with demonic beasts. Although the two deliberately searched for them, they did not encounter even one. They didn't even encounter any ordinary wild beast. As the sky slowly darkened, the two of them began to feel hungry. They had only brought a small amount of food as emergency rations. They had actually intended to hunt the demonic beasts on the mountain for food. "We have to quickly hunt a demonic beast. Otherwise, we'll have to go hungry tonight," Ling Han said as he brandished the iron sword in his hand. He had bought the sword before he had departed for the journey. It was considerably expensive, being priced at 10 silver coins. It would be enough against a demonic beast of body refining tier, but against a demonic beast of element gathering tier, it wouldn't even be able to break through its defense. Moreover, he was not an equal opponent for a demonic beast in the element gathering tier anyway. Lu Yutong suddenly stopped walking. "What is it? Have you heard something?" Ling Han said with a bit of excitement. "My shoelaces came undone." Lu Yutong crouched down. He never imagined that this woman had a bit of a sense of humor. Ling Han shrugged and waited until Lu Yutong stood up. The two of them then continued their way forward. However, they had not walked too far before Lu Yutong once again crouched down. "Your shoelaces came undone again?" Ling Han asked. "No, I heard something." Lu Yutong looked over in a particular direction. Her expression was still icy cold. This woman definitely had a cold sense of humor. Ling Han too glanced in the same direction. Lu Yutong was in the element gathering tier, so her sight and hearing were much stronger than his. The shrubs in front of them were shaking, as if something was making its way out. Very quickly, a gigantic wolf's head emerged, rapidly followed by the appearance of its body. It was about the size of a water buffalo and was blood-red in color, though its skin had several rotting scars scattered all over its body. It looked a little disgusting. "Our luck's not bad, this is a rotten blood wolf." Ling Han's eyes lit up. Cultivating the indestructible Heaven Scroll required various valuable materials to support his training, and the fresh blood of demonic beasts was currently the best material available, while the rotten blood wolf could be considered as one of the strongest demonic beasts in the body refining tier. "Be careful," Lu Yutong reminded. A mature rotten blood wolf was a being in the 9th layer of body refining tier. Other than that, demonic beasts always had a big advantage over humanity when it came to strength and defense, and that was the case even when a demonic beast and a human cultivator had similar cultivation. The advantage of martial artists, on the other hand, was in the fact that they could use various martial arts skills and weapons to greatly increase their own power. However, Ling Han was only in the 7th layer of body refining tier now. There was too big a gap between him and the rotten blood wolf. Moreover, a martial artist could die at any moment in a battle against a demonic beast. The battle would not end even if you shout, "Stop," or "I give up." Don't worry! Ling Han smiled. Wielding the iron sword in his hand, his expression immediately became serious. The rotten blood wolf continuously released deep growls. In front of it stood two people. The man did not look very threatening to it, but the woman standing behind him caused the wolf to feel dread. However, due to the ferocious nature of a demonic beast, it was not willing to give up its prey. The blood and flesh of demonic beasts were considered extremely nutritious to any martial artist, but martial artists were likewise a very nutritious meal to demonic beasts. The rotten blood wolf was very cautious. It did not attack right away. Yutong, step back, Ling Han said. Wolves were an extremely patient, very careful species. It must have sensed Lu Yutong's hidden strength. Lu Yutong frowned faintly. Considering the current distance, she would be able to help him in time if he needed it. But if this distance increased, then should Ling Han encounter any danger, she might not be able to do anything to help him. Trust me, Ling Han smiled. Lu Yutong finally stepped back slowly. The rotten blood wolf's ferocious nature was immediately roused. The claws of its front paws dug into the ground and its jaws opened, revealing 2 rows of sharp dagger-like teeth, exuding a cold air. Ling Han crooked his finger and said, "You big stupid dog, come! Ayo!" The rotten blood wolf released a howl, pouncing abruptly at a very surprising speed. Ling Han did not panic. With a wave of his long sword, the shocking electricity sword arts had already been initiated. Shwa! Only one sword stabbed forward, yet 2 flashes of cold light appeared. One of them was the sword itself, while the other was a white-colored energy. Sword Chi! Lu Yutong could not help breathing out in shock. Sword Chi was the symbol of a swordsman, just like a saber's wielder needed to have saber chi. It was incomparably sharp, and extremely powerful. She had not formed sword chi yet. She knew the difficulty of achieving it. She had an uncle who had been acclaimed as a genius in the art of the sword, yet he had only formed sword chi after 5 years of immersing himself in the path of the sword. Was this guy really human? Ling Han felt no surprise, however. Forming sword chi was only a natural course of event. His goal was sword ray. Sword ray was the solid form of sword chi. Its power was even stronger. Unfortunately, he had not spent much time on sword arts in his last life, so he had only formed sword chi, and did not manage to form sword ray. The prerequisite for forming sword ray was that one thrust of the sword would have tens of flashes of sword chi, which then had to be condensed into sword ray. Just now, he had only managed to release 1 flash of sword chi. He still had a very long way to go. The next step from sword ray was sword heart. This was the highest level one could achieve on the path of the sword. However, against a rotten blood wolf, 1 flash of sword chi was more than enough. Chapter 28. Chapter 28, Green Spiritual Fruit. As the shocking electricity sword arts unfolded, Ling Han's long sword moved freely, his figure graceful. Accompanying the display of shocking electricity sword arts was the exiting cloud step. Every step was about 4 or 5 meters long, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right, suddenly forwards, suddenly backwards. His steps appeared strange and were extremely quick, becoming a blur to any observer's eyes. Lu Yutong looked on from the side and could not help nodding her head in secret. If she suppressed her cultivation level to the 7th layer of body refining tier, she would definitely not be able to perform as well as Ling Han. Rather, she would probably be facing danger from all sides by now. After all, there was a big difference in cultivation level between Ling Han and his opponent, 2 layers. Furthermore, the opponent was a demonic beast. Normally, in a battle between a martial artist and a demonic beast, the martial artist needed to have a slight advantage in cultivation level to attain victory. If the cultivation levels of the martial artist and the demonic beast were about the same, then the martial artist had a higher chance of losing. After all, not every martial artist was a battle genius. Ling Han's sword moves were becoming more and more fluid. His steps were natural and smooth as he enjoyed the pleasure of battling. He had really put too much focus into the path of alchemy in his last life. In terms of martial arts, he used to care about cultivation level only. His whole journey upwards had just been a superficial understanding of martial arts. But this time, as he once again stepped onto the path of martial arts, he suddenly discovered that martial arts could actually be very interesting too. The rotten blood wolf had become his sparring partner, allowing him to practice his moves to his heart's content, tempering his grasp of the shocking electricity sword arts. 10 minutes later, the rotten blood wolf was already covered with cuts and bruises. This caused it to become very fearful. This seemingly weak human was actually so powerful. It did not want to retreat, but it feared even more that not only would the two not become an offering to its fangs, but it itself would become a meal for these two humans. "There's no escape!" Ling Han laughed loudly. The sword moved as he willed it to. 2 flashes of sword chi were simultaneously released in between the glints of cold light. 2 flashes of sword chi. He had finally broke through. Pooh! Blood splattered as a crimson flower suddenly blossomed on the neck of the rotten blood wolf. Its large body toppled over with a loud noise, its eyes open wide as if it still could not believe that a human at the 7th layer of body refining tier would actually be able to kill it. Demonic beasts had a very high level of intelligence. Powerful demonic beasts could even possibly have intelligence comparable to a human's. Ling Han nodded. The power of 2 flashes of sword chi was indeed huge. Previously, 1 flash of sword chi only allowed him to fight on equal footing with the rotten blood wolf, but 2 flashes allowed him to kill it in an instant. As expected, even if the cultivation level was the same, there could still be a large discrepancy in actual strength of different martial artists. At the side, Lu Yutong was once again shocked into speechlessness. Just this little bit of time, and Ling Han had improved from 1 flash of sword chi to 2. If that uncle of hers knew about this, wouldn't he be shamed to the point of jumping into a river and drown himself? As that uncle of hers had spent more than 30 years to form 4 flashes of sword chi, he was already acclaimed as a genius swordsman by the whole clan. But when compared to Ling Han, however, she did not know how far ahead Ling Han's starting line was, or how terrifying his comprehension ability was. Otherwise, how would he have been able to achieve heaven tier by 200 years old in his last life? "Dinner's settled," Ling Han said with a smile. The two of them found a small brook. Settling by the brook, they cleaned the body of the rotten blood wolf. They naturally wouldn't waste the blood of a demonic beast, and so poured all the blood into a pouch. Afterwards, Ling Han would bath himself in the blood to absorb the essence of it to temper his own body. They started a fire and cut off the wolf's leg for barbecue. After sprinkling some salt on it, a fragrant aroma very quickly wafted out. There shouldn't be too many demands when on a trip out in the wilderness. After they had washed the wolf's leg with clean water from the brook and it had dried, the sky had already completely darkened. They did not continue their journey onwards. Instead, they both sat cross-legged by the brook and began cultivating. Ling Han bathed himself in the blood of the demonic beast. He started to circulate indestructible heaven scroll to extract the concentrated essence of the blood for his own use. After merely slightly more than 10 minutes, this dense, sticky beast's blood became watery and diluted. The essence within it was already completely spent. Like I thought, improving one's physique is truly quite difficult, Ling Han thought. Let's use an example. If a martial artist in the element gathering tier was consciously defending using origin power covering his body while being freely attacked by a martial artist of body refining tier, it would be impossible for the latter to break through this layer of defense. However, if they didn't try to defend, the defense of a martial artist of element gathering tier was not much stronger than a martial artist of body refining tier. For instance, should a martial artist in element gathering tier be ambushed by a martial artist in body refining tier when asleep, then the chances were high that he would die due to his carelessness. Meanwhile, strengthening one's physique would ensure that this defense would be a passive and permanent one, active even when asleep or unconscious. However, the strengthening of the physique was an extremely difficult task that required the expense of a large amount of valuable natural treasures. Ling Han had been the previous type, and had not spent much effort on strengthening his physique in his last life. Of course, the reason why the beast's blood could be refined so quickly was because the indestructible heaven scroll was much too powerful and shockingly efficient. Otherwise, for other kinds of cultivation techniques like stone skin skill, it might require about 3 or 4 days' time to be completely refined. Ling Han could clearly feel that his muscles had become denser and his skin tougher. If a sharp piece of rock was drawn over his skin, the most it would do would be leaving behind a white mark. Very soon, he should be able to achieve the physique of Dead Tree Tier. After the night had passed, the two of them continued their journey on the mountain, seeking demonic beasts to battle. From the second day onwards, it seemed as if their luck had taken a turn for the better as they continuously encountered demonic beasts. This did not just provide Ling Han with a very good chance for accumulating actual battle experience, but also provided him with a large supply of beast's blood, allowing him to continuously advance in his cultivation of indestructible heaven scroll. On the 4th day, they exited the forest and saw 5 people sitting in a clearing not too far ahead. The 5 of them looked as if they had gone through a huge battle, every one of them looking quite miserable. These 5 were all youngsters, all of them less than 20 years old. 3 of the group had achieved the 9th layer of body refining tier while the other 2 were in the 8th layer. In a small place like Grey Cloud Town, based on their individual cultivation level, the 5 of them could definitely be praised as geniuses. Lu Yutong immediately took out a veil to conceal her face. She was born too beautiful and her unworldly beauty easily caused problems, though she herself had no fear of such problems. "Brother, which town are you from?" one of the young men asked. His tone was filled with confidence, hinting that he should be from some large, wealthy clan. Ling Han smiled and said, "Grey Cloud Town. We're all from Guarak Town," that young man continued to say, and began to introduce his group. "I am Lu Dong, he's Chenping Ju, he's Li Hao, that guy's Zhou Chang, and this beauty here is Zhu Shui, the noble Miss Zhu." Ling Han nodded at the 5 of them, and said, "I'm Ling Han, and this here is Lu Yutong. Ling Han, we discovered a green spiritual fruit just now, yet there is a very powerful demonic beast standing guard nearby, so we have no way of getting to it. How about it, are you interested in working together with us?" Lu Dong suggested to Ling Han. The reason behind his friendly attitude was revealed by his words. "Oh?" Ling Han's heart stirred. A green spiritual fruit would not only improve the cultivation level of a martial artist, it was also very beneficial for a martial artist preparing to break through to the element gathering tier. The 5 people in front of him were very close to achieving the peak of the 9th layer of body refining tier. Should they consume a green spiritual fruit at this stage, it would be extremely helpful to their breakthrough. Spiritual fruits were different from alchemical pills. They were completely natural treasures, so consuming them had no side effects, unlike how it was the case with alchemical pills. If one were to continuously take alchemical pills, traces of poisonous impurities present in alchemical pills would accumulate within their body. However, there were some spiritual fruits that possessed effects so strong that they had to be refined into pills before they could be consumed. Otherwise, it would be the same as committing suicide. "What level is that demonic beast?" Ling Han asked. "Miasma Cloud Beast, 9th layer of body refining tier," Zhou Chang replied. Ling Han suddenly understood why even these 5 people were powerless. As the miasma cloud beast would continuously release large amounts of poisonous miasma during battle, fighters had to hold their breath. However, in a violent battle, even for a martial artist, how long would they be able to hold their breath for? Thus, without crushing power to end the battle in a very short period of time, there would be no way to defeat a miasma cloud beast. However, you must first receive a saber attack from me to prove that you possess sufficient strength. Li Hao spoke and brandished the saber in his hand, his face showing a very cool expression, fully intent on showing off. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.